and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I'm Cameron Reigle.
And can you feel it in the air, Cameron? It's E3 season. It's almost here. The most wonderful, anxiety-inducing, vomiting over the toilet time of the year. It's right around the corner. Hard to believe, probably because we're not making travel arrangements for Los Angeles, and it just feels like
I'm not trading humid heat for dry heat.
Yeah, I could use some dry heat today, I have to be honest. When I lived in Los Angeles, I missed the rain. But right now, I could use some of that just very, very arid desert dryness that Los Angeles provides. Because I live in a fetid swamp at the moment, and it's disgusting. So anyway, yeah, this is a weird E3 because this is all online. So nobody's attending E3 in person. Nothing happening at the Los Angeles Convention Center. So we're all just kind of in the same boat this year.
We've also got this weird situation where there's like, I don't know if I'd call it like E3 counter-programming, just like digital presentations not necessarily affiliated with E3, but just happening in the summer.
Yeah.
And I'm still like mentally lumping them all in as, it's E3 season.
Yeah, so we're trying to get excited. Obviously, there's a lot of rumors and innuendo out there right now, and I'm trying not to let that really influence how I'm feeling going into it, but we're going to make the best out of E3 as we always do. Now, whether or not this will be a legendary E3 remains to be seen, but I figured we just passed the 20th anniversary of what might be my favorite E3 in all of my time here on DK Vine. And that might be a controversial opinion. Everybody has their favorite E3s, but I feel like E3 2001 is the E3 for me that really embodies what I want out of the show every year. And one blissful year we had it, and it was fleeting. It was but a fleeting moment in time, as it turned out. But I thought, with E3's imminent arrival this year and the 20th anniversary that we just passed for E3 2001, it would be good to finally sit down and do an entire episode that's kind of a retrospective of not the show itself, because I really don't care about what was happening with PlayStation 2, but what it meant for the Donkey Kong universe and us at DK Vine in particular. So we're going to be getting into all of that on this episode. But if you do want to stay up, plugged in and kind of just inside the community bubble for E3 as it pertains to the Donkey Kong universe, then you better head over to dkvine.com. That's right, if you listen to the Kongversation and you don't visit dkvine.com, I don't know what you're doing, because dkvine.com is the central hub of the DK Vine empire, our media empire. And the forum is hopping right now. People are talking about the rumors for the potential Donkey Kong game. And you can join that discussion with like-minded weirdos, as we like to say. So DKVine.com, it's DKU, rare platonic news, and nothing but. So check it out. Make sure you bookmark it heading into E3 in a couple of weeks. And also be sure to check us out on Patreon. I don't like to beg for money. I don't like to, panhandle. I don't like to busk. But, the Patreon is what keeps the entire site, our entire media empire, afloat right now. I mean, we don't have ads. YouTube demonetized us because of a wacky misunderstanding that they're not rectifying, because I'm not a big enough YouTuber to raise a stink. But yeah, the Patreon's it. The Patreon is how we make money. It's how we keep the site. It keeps the site, the hosting, the domains, everything afloat, and it also allows us to pay for equipment or just just provide for the things that, you know, the bigger sites take for granted that gets handed to them. So, you know, dkvine.com, if you like what we do, if you have any cash to spare on a monthly basis, check it out. You get perks. It's not just, please give me money. It's, no, we'll give you stuff. But that is at dkvine.com/Patreon. And before I stop with the shameless shilling, be sure to follow us on social media. This is the time of year you want to do that. You can follow us on Twitter. I run the Twitter. I also run the Facebook account. Updates every day. I make sure I'm on both every day, making new content, churning it out. I've been updating the Facebook page, which I've been in charge of since, I think, 2012. I've been having daily updates for that for the last 8 years, Cameron. 8 years of daily updates. I have not missed a day. I am a broken individual, if that isn't clear. And I also make sure I tweet every day since I've run the Twitter, since I took that over in 2017. But also Joe Mudd, our friend and fellow site staffer, Joe Mudd runs our Instagram page. So check that out as well. And this is the time of year as we get news and game reveals and all sorts of surprises that you'll want to, you know, follow us, because I will give my insights. I'll keep you up to date on everything, and we'll all have a laugh along the way. Not just new stuff, it's also a lot of nostalgia. So if you want to relive your childhood, your glory years, that's the way to do it. DK Vine on social media. Cameron, do you have anything you want to plug? I feel bad just sitting here shamelessly shilling my own wares without you getting to do the same.
Nothing for me personally, I suppose, at the moment, though. You could, I suppose, buy Anton Ball Deluxe on Steam.
You could do that. Why would they be interested in Anton Ball Deluxe if they're interested in you, Cameron Reigle, the person?
Let's see. I did the key art that will welcome you on the store page for that game, and I also worked on the game's opening. And if you are a listener vested in the Donkey Kong universe, the character Clive from off of Clive and Wrench is a playable character.
There you go. All right. Anton Ball Deluxe. Check it out. All right. Well, here we go, Cameron. Let me set the stage for you, because I like to create images. I like to create tapestries with my words. It was May 2001. The Boomer Run Media was publishing all manner of think pieces about what it really meant for Bob Dylan to turn 60 years old.
It meant that he turned 60.
Oh, but it meant so much more than that, Cameron. Think of what it means for Bob Dylan to be 60. Meanwhile, a relatively slow few months for news meant we were on the verge of being inundated with summer-long reports about shark attacks. Yes, shark attacks. In an attempt to create a sensationalistic Summer of the Shark, as they ended up calling it. Really, there were no more shark attacks than normal. It was just they were talking about them. But still, shark attacks, Cameron. That was what was happening. Shark attacks. We were all afraid of sharks in the summer of 2001. Watch out for those sharks. They're going to get you. Don't go swimming in the pool. They might be filled with sharks. And in the Los Angeles Convention Center, hopefully free of sharks, the 7th annual E3 was being held, where the 6th generation consoles were facing off really for the first time. The already released PlayStation 2 and the upcoming Nintendo GameCube, and new kid on the block, Microsoft Xbox.
And fresh off the death of the Dreamcast.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the Dreamcast. Whoops.
Like this would have been it was discontinued in March of that year, so this would have been right after the drop-off point for the Dreamcast.
Yeah, I feel like our friend Josh, the Geek Critique Wallen, is pulling out his hair right now that I didn't mention the Dreamcast in that 6th generation of consoles, even though it didn't really have a presence at this show, did it? Because it was dead. Dead. As dead as the victims of those sharks. As dead as we thought Bob Dylan would soon be, despite he just turned 80 the other week. We've discussed E3 2001 on this podcast many the time. I know some of you are sitting there listening in the bathtub with the candles lit as you like to listen to this podcast, thinking, I've heard this episode before. You've talked about E3 2001 before. This isn't new. What are you doing, Hyle? And we've talked about it. I think it came up last season when we did the early pandemic, let's focus on happy things episode I did with Jeff. E3 2001 was one of my DKU highlights, right? But with us just passing the 20th anniversary and the rumors about the Donkey Kong franchise heading into this year's E3, I wanted to really take the time to really commemorate and remember what I consider to be the ideal E3 as far as Donkey Kong Universe reveals goes. We've had some exciting E3s since then, for sure. And we've had E3s that have really given us games that actually saw release in their intended original reveal state. But I don't think anything has really touched E3 2001 in my mind since I was covering E3s with DK Vine. And, this was before I was attending E3. I was still in high school here, right? I wasn't going to E3 physically at the time, but E3 was already this magical time, this Christmas in early summer, or in this case, late spring, for gamers, where it seemed like anything was possible. Going into E3, you were always hoping that your favorite franchise would get a new reveal, and this E3 was really the culmination of everything we could have hoped for when it came to the Donkey Kong universe, because we didn't just get a reveal. We got multiple reveals on the same show. Games announced back to back to back. And it was really, aside from an E3 or two in the buyout era, it was the only time we've really had that sensation when it comes to not just the DKU, because that's kind of a broad concept, right? The DKU can be Donkey Kong, it can be Banjo, it can be Conker, it can be these other rare Platonic franchises that are tenuously connected by Goldfish or whatever. But this was the E3 where we got Donkey Kong games out the ass. And that is the rarity. I mentioned the buyout era. We got that in the buyout era, but the buyout era, of course, was fraught with anxiety and politics and all sorts of existential angst that didn't really let us appreciate it at the time.
It's really wild to think back on this E3 for me, because I may have, I was still very young when this was going on. I wasn't even I don't even think I may have not even been online at all. I definitely wasn't very online, but I think even though I may have had some awareness that at the very least that things like E3 and Space World were a thing, I think this is the first E3 I can recall where I was fully cognizant of the show as a concept, of this mega event where upcoming games were shown off, and the sheer glut of them that were very specifically things I would be interested in was a very weird way to get that intro.
Yeah, E3 was introduced to me in the July 1995 issue of Nintendo Power, where they covered the very first E3. I didn't know it was the very first E3. I just thought E3 was apparently this thing that happened, and I just was learning about it. But the very first E3, which was the debut of Donkey Kong Country 2. And, from there, E3 became the coming out of so many Donkey Kong games. Donkey Kong Country 3, Banjo-Kazooie and Conquer, albeit we didn't know them as DKU games at the time. And this E3 was really the E3 that I think rode that wave of momentum that had been building since Donkey Kong Country, and really gave us what we had always hoped for out of the show and out of game reveals. Because Rare revealed 4 DKU games at this E3. Plus, they had a big showing for another one that had already been announced. And then there were a slew of cameo games as well. And not just like meager cameo games, but Smash and Mario Kart. So it was a huge event for DK Vine and for our fandom. And what makes it all the more bittersweet is what ultimately ended up happening with these games and with these reveals and Rare and Nintendo and Donkey Kong. We had no idea the journey that was to come.
It gives the E3 2001 a very weird like feeling in my head, because it was, again, as you said, it was kind of the dawn of the 6th generation. So I was looking at all these magazine pictures that were like at games that looked to that point unlike anything I'd ever seen. Just to me, like I could not honestly imagine games looking any like substantially better than they looked, and I realize how silly that was now.
Yeah.
But just kind of being blown away by the sheer visual quality of all the pictures I was seeing, and then having that yanked away like a year and some change later kind of makes a lot of E3 2001 feel like this very good dream you remember having that you woke up from.
Yeah. I remember dreams where I would like meet Paul McCartney and not just meet him, Cameron, but befriend him, and he would just like think I was just amazing company. And I would remember waking up and that you had that brief moment where you ponder if that was a dream or you were just remembering what had happened the day before.
Like we'll probably get to it, but specifically that one screenshot from Donkey Kong Racing that's DK riding on Rambi, the one that was in all the magazines and on the back of the GameCube box. Like, I think about that image now. I can look it up on Mario Wiki right now, stare directly at it, and think, nah, that doesn't look real.
Yeah, there is this surreal quality to all of this that we'll get into, and maybe we'll do future episodes about other monumental E3s when we hit the 20th anniversary of that. Maybe this is the start of a new Kongversation series, because E3 2004 I think is the most comparable E3 when it comes to like glut of Donkey Kong reveals and DKU content from Rare, but it was in a completely different context. Just a scant 3 years later, it was just like the world had been turned upside down. And
I'd say in both cases we didn't know how good we had it, but for different reasons.
Yes, exactly. Like that is a really eloquent way of putting it. So let's just launch into it, because I can wax poetic about the event and what it means all night long, but I want to actually discuss these games. And let me just say, like, these are all games we, again, have talked about on the Kongversation in the past. Sometimes we've dedicated an entire episode to these games, but this will be in the context of the actual reveal at this E3. We'll try to keep it limited as possible, but the first game we talk about, of course, it's the key art for this episode. On the channels where the episodes have individual key arts. So like, this is what we're going to spend the bulk of time talking about, because this is what we really come back to when we talk about E3 2001. And it's actually sort of relevant, even more so this week, beyond just having the 20th anniversary of the trailer. We've actually gotten a better look at the trailer than we ever have before. I'm talking about Donkey Kong Racing. So Donkey Kong Racing, right? Like the name itself just invokes emotion for the hardcore Donkey Kong aficionado. And it's the console sequel to Diddy Kong Racing, but it switches out the action from the classic kart, plane, hovercraft trio of vehicles to animal buddies and Kremlin crew wildlife as seen from the Donkey Kong games. And that alone is just god tier as far as ideas go. Like it is one thing to say, oh man, we almost had a full-fledged console sequel to Diddy Kong Racing. And if we just known that and we didn't know any details, that alone would be heartbreaking. But the fact that we got a trailer for this at E3, the fact that we know what the idea, the elevator pitch or the lift pitch for our friends at Rare, that we know what it was going to be, what the game would have entailed, just makes this all the more tragic. Oh,
I think this will always, at least hopefully always, I'd hate to be more disappointed than this, but I think like the hardest loss to take in terms of like a DKU game that didn't see the light of day.
Yeah.
It's going to be a high bar to top.
Yeah. So as I alluded to, we just got a new upload of what's relatively for the time high definition. It's a high definition version of the trailer that YouTuber Gold Medal Sonic, not to be confused with the Mario and Sonic at the Olympics superfan Gold Medal Sonic. It's a different medal. They uploaded a ripped segment from a 2001 DVD that I didn't know existed called The Future of Video Games Volume 1. And I don't know if there's a Volume 2, Cameron, but I think, as you mentioned...
It could be like History of the World Part 1, where they just throw that in there to mess with you.
I think like once you promise Donkey Kong Racing in The Future of Video Games Volume 1... there's no need for a volume 2 when this fails to deliver, because we're still waiting on this future. So this was actually uploaded. I looked into it. This was actually uploaded to archive.org by someone named JC Calhoun, which sounds like a bootlegger or some sort of like turn of the century flim flam man. But JC Calhoun uploaded this, found the DVD. And then YouTuber Gold Medal with a T, Sonic, uploaded it. And I'm very thankful they did. This DVD, I guess it would have used the same source file that IGN and other media outlets at the time were provided by Nintendo, but it's a lot less compressed than we're used to seeing. And most importantly for us, it's lacking the IGN watermark that was emblazoned on all surviving copies of the Donkey Kong Racing trailer the past 20 years. So there are new intro graphics, just a word of warning. There's intro graphics that are superimposed over the bit where Espresso sticks his head out of the sand.
It also cuts out the very beginning of the trailer, which was the sort of logo fading into the establishing shot of the sky, which I wanted to call attention to that bit of intro because it always reminded me of like a cheesy sitcom intro, kind of the way that it fades directly from music into like a silent establishing shot. Like it feels like the beginning of a like that 70s show episode to me.
Yeah. Danny Masterson also canceled. So this I would say this watermark and losing the very like the musical intro, it's worth it to get everything else in better quality. And oh my god, like I was watching this on YouTube when it was uploaded last Saturday, and I was just noticing details I'd forgotten about. Like I knew intellectually existed in the trailer, but I'm so used to seeing that very compressed, blurry IGN version. There's even a better high def version of the IGN trailer that was uploaded a year or two back, but that pales compared to this. And I was just like, I was just making screenshots and making GIFs. I was so excited about this. And I think what really like sent me over the moon was I forgot Glimmer was in it. I forgot Glimmer swam by in Kremlantis. And
it's so wild to think that like we have the context to know now that this game did not get very far, but the sheer, like, even with that context, the sheer glut of everything that's in this video for even just a split second is all the more impressive. Like, to be blunt, like, if this is what, like, Rare could, like, hastily churn out on the quick to get something out in a video, imagine what this would have looked like with time in the oven.
Yeah, it's just staggering to me, the amount of fan service in this. And the amount of, like, cross-game lore mingling, which we're gonna fully break it down, I guess, because we have to. But, you know, we can't let this go. Like, the fan base has never gotten over this game, this trailer, really, because that's all it is. It's a trailer. And for the record, I'm aware that this game was only really a trailer and a concept, and it never progressed much farther than that before the buyout hit. And then, of course, it shifted gears, or I guess it changed hooves. I don't know the metaphor there, but it became the oft-delayed project Saberman Stampede for the Xbox 360, before it was eventually canceled. And, you know, I tweet about this game every now and then. I just get a hair up my ass, and I'm like, yeah, I want to talk about Donkey Kong Racing, because for a very abbreviated 2001 trailer for the GameCube, it is almost like an immaculate work of art to me. And, you know, a Rare employee once got kind of noticeably irritated with me on Twitter when I was talking about it. You know, they're pointing out, hey, this game wasn't really a game. It was a trailer and some concepts that never really got much farther than that. Get over it. And they didn't say get over it, but that was the, like, why are you talking about it? Like, stop getting hung up over this. And they deleted that reply. I think they realized how it came off. But, you know, why does something like this inspire this level of devotion, fanaticism among the fandom? And it's honestly, it's the killer concept. It's not like this was a phantom Mamie game we learned about after the fact, like Rare's proposed Donkey Kong Country 4 for the Nintendo DS, or any of the stalled projects from the early Xbox era that we saw on Rare Replay's bonus documentaries. It's not like we can't get over Conker getting medieval or anything. This was announced for Nintendo's new system at E3, right? This was on the back of the very first GameCube boxes as a game that was coming soon. So I don't really care that it didn't get that far behind the scenes. From where I was sitting, it was a very real game that was definitely happening. Both a sequel to my favorite mascot racer and an installment in my all-time favorite video game franchise from a team and studio I implicitly trusted. And it was the notion that characters from Diddy Kong Racing would be meeting characters from the Country and Land games and Donkey Kong 64. We would have tracks inspired by Donkey Kong 64 and Donkey Kong Land. And it was this big nerdy celebration of the past 7 years at that time of Rare's tenure on Donkey Kong. And, you know, Cameron, we've talked about this off air. We've talked about this in the Inner Circle. We've talked about this on our Sea of Thieves stream. We don't get this anymore with Donkey Kong.
No, and honestly, at the time, we didn't even get this, because in the era this came out, like, Donkey Kong had already kind of started to hit an identity crisis with DK64, which, like, as we now know, like, deliberately started to kind of veer off using a lot of the past characters from any game except DKC1.
Yeah.
So just seeing all of these characters intermingling, like, oh, that's Tiny Kong and Glimmer in the same screenshot, and
Yeah.
DK and Taj together. But I think the point you were building toward was you had shared this HD upload in our DK Vine Inner Circle Discord, and one of the things that came up was, I think, a screen grab you posted of Tiny riding Unguard with Diddy riding an unidentified swordfish, alongside Glimmer in the background, and like maybe some chomps. And I'm thinking to myself, this is more named returning characters than we got in the entirety of Donkey Kong Country Returns.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And yeah, you're right. Like, even in this era, like 2001, coming off of the heels of Donkey Kong 64, Donkey Kong 64 was this weird early version of what we would often get with Nintendo doing Donkey Kong games post-Rare, where they would be like, oh, well, we shouldn't use these characters. We shouldn't use these characters. We need to scale it back. We need to keep it simple. We need to have this core base of characters, probably from the original Donkey Kong Country, if that. Let's not get carried away here with the fan service. Nobody wants that.
It feels like kind of like a lack of confidence in giving the audience credit to accept things that they don't understand.
Yeah, because I'm not sure, like, again, like, the Donkey Kong 64 development, like, where initially they decided we were just going to use characters from the original Donkey Kong Country and new characters. You know, that obviously fell by the wayside as development progressed. They brought in Wrinkly Kong, they brought in some Donkey Kong Country 2 baddies. At one point, Recoil from Donkey Kong Country 3 was going to be in it, but it's still like this early iteration of, like, well, we don't want to use too many Donkey Kong characters in our Donkey Kong game. That became, I think, legendary. Obviously with Jungle Beat, even though Jungle Beat, the intentions behind it were mistranslated for us, and there's a lot of, I think, animosity that sprung up as a result that was misplaced. But, you know, even with the beloved retro games, especially Tropical Freeze, you see it. You see it all the time. And it's weird to think that Rare also indulged in that. Rare, the people who invented most of these characters, they also, you know, parcheesied in it a little bit, even if they did kind of veer away from it as development went on. You know, Payon came close to fan service. I mean, I say they came close. They outright indulged in Donkey Kong fan service to a degree that came the closest to the Donkey Kong Racing trailer. But Payon's Donkey Kong games, King of Swing, Jungle Climber, and Barrel Blast, they came at a time when the series lacked a firm identity or any momentum at all. And so they never felt like a big deal in the way that Donkey Kong Racing felt like a big deal. And we were also too busy fretting about what was happening with Jungle Beat and whether or not Diddy Kong was going to be kept around, and just all sorts of weird BS that I think kept us from appreciating Payon, but also the general audience didn't really appreciate Payon. And they are cult classics.
In the general audience's defense, Payon's games were extremely undermarketed.
They were. They had, like, no commercials. I don't even know if we had print advertisements for them.
We did definitely have print advertisements, but, I mean, it was print advertisements.
Yeah. Yeah, they were just these weird, like, low-budget side releases that, in the Donkey Kong fandom, we knew all about. We were like, excited about. Really, that's all we could talk about on DK Vine, but the general audience, they just came and went and just so under the radar. They're cult classics today, but nothing compared to what Donkey Kong Racing would have been.
And I do suspect that, like, a lot of the reason that Peon's games, especially their first two, were such a like continuity blowout. Was I think the motivation was very similar to why Donkey Kong Racing was such a continuity blowout, which is you are setting DK in a very different context than what people are used to, what they usually come to the table for with Donkey Kong. It's not his traditional platforming set. You need to bring in all these familiar elements to cement this sense of identity that, oh, this is a Donkey Kong game. I recognize these things. This meaningfully communicates something that already appeals to me.
Yeah, that is true. But the Donkey Kong Racing trailer goes above and beyond as far as what it integrates, because it's not just we're gonna use some recognizable characters. Like, we're gonna bring in Lanky Kong. Lanky Kong wasn't in a trailer, but we know he was one of the characters earmarked for the game, along with Cranky. But it goes beyond that, because we're going to have locations from all of our Donkey Kong games brought to life. Kremlantis, Cameron. Like, that's what I can't get over. Kremlantis, the second world from Donkey Kong Land, was shown in this trailer. Diddy and Tiny Kong were racing on swordfish while anglerfish-filled waters inundated with chomps. Summer of the Shark, right? I mean, it was Kremlantis. It was Kremlantis from Donkey Kong Land. All of these elements converging.
I mean, even we should even just point out, like, the very first thing you see in this trailer once the title fades is Espresso the Ostrich, who at this point had only been in 3 games, 2 of which were just Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah. This was kind of the beginning of the Espresso-sance, if you want to call it that, because Espresso, of course, would go on to appear in Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Game Boy Advance.
Have we ever done a count? Are there more ostriches in this trailer than there are in DKC2 GBA?
Oh man, that would be a good one. It's like one of those jelly bean jars. If you can count how many ostriches there are, we'll give you this Corvette. And then, of course, Espresso is also in Banjo-Pilot, which there's reasons for that, which we'll get into. But I think, this was the weird kind of period where Espresso is back, baby, and nothing can stop him now. Compare this trailer to anything seen in Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze. As we mentioned on our Sea of Thieves stream this past Sunday, there are more Donkey Kong references in Sea of Thieves and Yooka-Laylee and Impossible Lair than there are in Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze. And that's an exaggeration and not true at all, but only slightly not true, right? There are still more explicit references to Donkey Kong Country in both games than you'll really find in Tropical Freeze even.
Yeah, at the very least, like, the Returns and Tropical Freeze, outside of a few examples, are very hesitant to play with your nostalgia like this kind of seems like it was going to.
Yeah, I mean, when you're referencing the tanks from Super Mario Brothers 3, or you're putting...
I should say play specifically with nostalgia for past Donkey Kong Country games.
Yes, because you're nostalgic for Super Mario Brothers 3, or you're putting Mr. Game & Watch in the background, or you're giving a giant big homage to Billy fucking Mitchell in your Donkey Kong game, but you can't reference Ingard the Swordfish? Where the hell did everything go wrong, Cameron? And look, I'm getting salty. I'm getting a little testy. So let me just say, I love and adore the retro duology. I'm not actually holding it against them or retro, because I realize circumstances and Nintendo and people were like, maybe, no, wrong character reference.
Yeah,
but
I would not view Returns and Tropical Freeze with the level of scrutiny that I do if I had not played them to the depth to get to that point of scrutiny, because I did really enjoy them.
I enjoyed them, and it's just weird to me that Donkey Kong, and I think it really has set in the last week or so when we got this, the clearest look we have ever gotten for the Donkey Kong Racing trailer, alongside the recent rumors about Nintendo EPD possibly doing the next Donkey Kong game. And maybe their intentions as far as the Donkey Kong brand goes, and then being reflective on the past 18 years, 19 years of Donkey Kong, and just thinking the fans want to be able to celebrate their favorite characters. Donkey Kong fans want to be able to enjoy Donkey Kong characters. You always bring up this Crash, like this Crash mobile game that has so many obscure Crash Bandicoot.
Oh, not even the Crash mobile game. I bring up Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, a remake of a game from 1999. That is this giant continuity blowout. Like to the point that some of the character additions in that game, like I can't even think of an equivalent in the Donkey Kong franchise that would be as obscure to make. Like,
yeah, it's really setting home for me how weird it is that Donkey Kong fans have such a bizarre struggle to get our characters in games anymore. Like in Donkey Kong games, like it is considered a faux pas to reference Donkey Kong in Donkey Kong game. You can reference Mario all you want, but to reference Donkey Kong characters in a Donkey Kong game, ew, why would you do that? Ew.
And for a while, it was something I would hesitate to raise issue with, because I was just so grateful to be getting new Donkey Kong games after it looked like that might not happen for a good long while.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I don't hold it against Tropical Freeze and Returns or Retro. I do hold it against Nintendo and their bizarre corporate mentalities, and even Rare indulged in this mentality back in 1999. So it's not even something that is necessarily native to Nintendo. It is this weird mindset that creeps into anybody who does the Donkey Kong games eventually, sans payon, that we don't want to bring back those characters.
I guess the hope for the future is that even though it ultimately didn't pan out, Donkey Kong Racing to me communicates that was the start of the pendulum starting to turn to sway the other direction at Rare.
Yeah.
And now I think we're seeing we might be seeing the signs that same exact thing is happening with Nintendo, considering the dawn of K. Rool and Smash on the back of his very apparent popularity.
Yeah, I mean, and I could say that it's kind of absurd, on the surface, that we could bring up the Smash ballot, but that took an international effort by the fans to show Nintendo that we really liked the main villain of the Donkey Kong series. Whereas we're talking about Crash Team Racing, and we're talking about obscure characters coming into that game.
Panda, the character from a cell phone game from before many people were playing cell phone games.
Yeah, the equivalent would be, what if one of the hippos from Donkey Kong Country Barrel Maze showed up? Or is that kind of absurd fan service that you wouldn't see ever with the Donkey Kong series, but we got with Donkey Kong Racing, and that's why this trailer is such a legendary what if for us. It's not even a what if, because it was an E3 trailer. It was an E3 reveal. It was on the back of the goddamn GameCube box. So I'm not going to apologize for loving this trailer and for loving the concept of this game. It's a game where you race animal buddies. One of the most beloved mechanics for Donkey Kong fans that was also completely ignored during the retro era. It's just a whole game dedicated to that. That's in the capsule of a Diddy Kong Racing sequel. Also, another legendary white whale for Donkey Kong fans. Oh my god, how could I not still be going on about this game 20 years later?
Yeah, I mean, your episode art which is the ending shot of the trailer of Kiddy Kong riding into the camera on Ellie, backed by like various other animal buddies and enemies from the series. Like, I want to see another moment like that, where I am just blown away by the sheer ridiculous, like self-indulgence.
But is it really self-indulgence if you're like, it's not self-indulgence if Mario has
self-indulgence, but just indulgence, really.
Yeah, but it's not indulgence if the Super Mario franchise has Goombas and Koopa Troopas and Yoshi in it. Like, that's the, like, we're made to feel bad as Donkey Kong fans for wanting Donkey Kong characters in a Donkey Kong game. That's how, like, I realized the past couple of weeks, this is where I'm at now. I wasn't salty about it for a long time because, again, like you, I was grateful for what we had after a long time of being in the wilderness. But now I'm getting a little salty about it. And I think what's causing it is just the hope for the future that, from what I'm hearing from sources and from what we've seen in the past from this new Donkey Kong Racing upload, it's really making me reevaluate and thinking, it's kind of bullshit, isn't it? Kind of bullshit that we as Donkey Kong fans have just kind of taken on face value. Well, you can't have Donkey Kong characters in a Donkey Kong game. We don't want fan service in a Donkey Kong game because Donkey Kong fans, are there really Donkey Kong fans? I mean, we're Donkey Kong fans, but we don't really exist, right? We're just kind of like an urban legend, like the Sasquatch.
I mean, we're obsessed with goldfish, so we might as well have goldfish memories.
So, all right. I will get off my my ugly soapbox here. I'm optimistic for the future, right? But it is just, I think the Kremlantis sequence was what broke me, Cameron. I think that's what really sent me over the edge.
The fact that you can call it the Kremlantis sequence, is
it's not even getting into the fact. It's not even getting into the fact that Donkey Kong and Taj the Genie were racing through Donkey Kong 64's Fungi Forest on zingers in an homage to Return of the Jedi's speeder bike sequence. Like, oh my god. Again, all due respect to those at Rare who, have a baked in opinion of me, but how could I not still be going on about this trailer? This was the best trailer ever. As a fan of Rare, as a fan of Donkey Kong, this is basically like my Casablanca, my Citizen Kane, this my Paddington 2. This is the best piece of cinema on the planet. So. Now I did want, before we move on, because I could sit here and talk about Donkey Kong Racing all night, and I probably will after we're done with this episode. I'm just gonna stare at the wall, stare at my Captain Bones poster up on the wall here, just talking to it about Donkey Kong Racing. But we know that outside of the trailer, as I mentioned, Cranky and Lanky were planned for the game, along with Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, Tiny Kong, Taj, Kiddy Kong, but had it actually seen development and had, circumstances been different, had Rare been bought by Nintendo, for example, and this actually saw release sometime in 2003, 2004, who else might have shown up? Because I have to imagine that even from what we've seen from design documents and character models, we would have seen more. Would we have seen Banjo and Kazooie in it, Cameron? Because the thing is, okay, Taj is in the game, and Taj is interesting because Taj is owned by Rare. Taj is not a Nintendo character, never was a Nintendo character, but they put Taj in the game because this is how, loosey-goosey they were feeling with Nintendo at the time, that, we'll put Taj in the game, sure.
There's also this, melding of Diddy Kong Racing and the Donkey Kong series in general that I think Taj is kind of the avatar of. I mean, you even see it in the logo. The logo, the racing part of Donkey Kong Racing is the racing type from the Diddy Kong Racing logo.
Yeah, this is a Diddy Kong Racing sequel. Like, we don't know it, I don't think there was a plot to speak of at this point. So we don't know if like it would have seen WizPig show up, but this was a Diddy Kong Racing sequel that was going to be published by Nintendo, as opposed to Diddy Kong Racing, which was a Rare published game that licensed Diddy Kong. It was switching it up, bringing it back into the Nintendo fold, but they were still going to integrate Diddy Kong Racing elements in the game, despite those being owned by Rare. Because at this point, I think a lot of the devs at Rare didn't care anymore. Like, they were just thinking, like, we're with Nintendo. Like, we've been with Nintendo for a long time. You see that with Donkey Kong
nobody
60.
would have had any reason to suspect that this relationship was changing anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the Stampers, but they weren't telling. But like, yeah, you saw that with Donkey Kong 64, where Rare kept the ownership for a lot of the characters, or he kept the trademarks at least for a lot of the characters. That is bizarre when you look at the copyrights for that game, that they held the trademarks for Tiny, Lanky, Chunky, really all of the new characters in the game. Like, it wasn't until the buyout that all of that got sorted out. So
that would have been 3 Rare-owned characters that we know were going to be in Donkey Kong Racing.
Good point. Yeah, good point. But, so would Banjo and Kazooie have been in it? Because they were Nintendo IPs at the time. It would have been very easy to put Banjo and Kazooie in it. What about upcoming characters in future Rare games like Cameo? Would they have pulled like a Banjo and Conquer, where they used Donkey Kong Racing as the chance to debut new Rare IPs? Something to think about that we never think about.
I certainly hope that if the roadmap had gotten a little bit farther, we would have seen more characters than what we know about, because I've had kind of this like extremely pessimistic like crackpot theory brewing in the background, which was if you look at the known roster for Donkey Kong Racing versus the known roster for Diddy Kong Pilot, there's this weird bifurcation between the two where some characters are in one game but not others. I think Diddy, Donkey, and Cranky are the only ones known to be shared between the two. Mm-hmm. And like, say, Tiny is in Donkey Kong Racing, Dixie is in Diddy Kong Pilot, Lanky is in Donkey Kong Racing, Candy is in Diddy Kong Pilot eventually. And I kind of, my inner pessimist is wondering, like, were they going to do this thing going forward where they kind of bifurcate the character rosters, keeping principal characters in only one game or the other? And I don't love that, because Dixie should definitely be in a console Donkey Kong Racing game, but I have no way of knowing if that was the case. I could be ascribing something I don't approve of to developers who never had that intention. So I'd love to be wrong.
Yeah, it's funny that you don't like that the bifurcated cast, because that is something I actually kind of like in a weird way, and maybe this is just like the sick masochist in me.
I think it's really that I just don't like it because Dixie is important enough of a character to be in both games.
I agree, and I feel like you would think that they would switch it, like put Dixie in this game and put Tiny in Diddy Kong Pilot, or put them both. I mean,
Dixie's Diddy's girlfriend. She'd go with the one where his name is in the title.
I guess. Well, let's talk about Diddy Kong Pilot. But before we move on from Donkey Kong Racing, I do want to add like a Where Are They Now kind of like Animal House tag to all these games. So Donkey Kong Racing, of course, was hit the hardest by the buyout. Because Rare could not make Donkey Kong games for a console, so it was they tried new concepts for it. We've seen concept art of this weird like they put XPs in the place of the Kongs, and I think this was this Super Monkey Carlo or something.
I think we've kind of like taken to calling it Monkey Carlo based on the fact that there's concept art that shows like a banner saying Monkey Carlo. I don't know
what Monkey Carlo means.
I don't know that necessarily would have been the title, because I think it's a joke. It's a play on Monte Carlo, the famous race, but that could have just been, for all we know, that name as a joke in like one track or something, or one GP. We don't necessarily know that it was the name, but it's in the absence of anything else, I think it's the best thing to call it.
Yeah, but this like really got away, apparently. Like we've seen them like in cars, right? So for a while there, they toyed with just making this a straight kart racer again. But with XPs for Kongs.
I kind of get the impression this didn't get very far, and I'm glad that vision of the game didn't, because I think it would ultimately just be kind of sad.
Yeah. But eventually they decided to use an established rare IP that would still make sense with the animal mechanic, and they decided to rebrand it as Saberman Stampede, which evolved away from a racing game entirely and became this like adventure game where Saberman uses animal steeds. And for several years on DK Vine, Saberman Stampede was, again, the white whale. Every E3, we were like, oh, Saberman Stampede, this is going to be the year they show off Saberman Stampede.
And I think we were like 80% joking for a part of it, but all really deep down wanted to see it.
Well, like by the time I say 2010 hit, we were joking mostly. But for the longest time, like this was the game we really wanted to see, because it was the game born out of Donkey Kong Racing. And we didn't even, like, it wasn't even officially announced.
I guess I'm projecting personal experience there, because for a good long while, like, I honestly wasn't sure Saberman Stampede was ever a real thing. It was kind of a hushed whispers thing for a while, I think, until it was listed in Cameo's credits.
Yeah, because the Stampede team helped out with Cameo to get it out the door. So it was a game in an early instance of leakers leaking to DK Vine. We knew about Saberman Stampede because of very early Rare leakers outside of Rare. And from there, like, it would be whispered about in the game media every now and then. So we knew it was coming. It was a badly kept secret. But eventually, it wasn't even officially revealed. It was just canceled outright by the time of the like Rare implosion. And they were then, you know, they became like the Connect studio for a bit until their reconfiguration of the studio into what they are now. But Saberman Stampede, yeah, that was the game we really wanted out of all future E3s post buyout, and now we never got this game at all. Like this is like the game that we probably wanted the most. That is the biggest tragedy coming out of this E3.
And it's weird because both visions of the game were very interesting to me, but for completely different reasons, and we didn't get to see either of them.
Yeah, it's a shame. I can't believe Nintendo never tried to make this game. Like, Payon made a Donkey Kong Racing game, which was hindered by the fact that they designed it for the bongos, and then it was moved to the Wii, and the mechanics didn't make sense anymore.
And we even know that they got at least one, like, Donkey Kong Racing game pitch.
Yeah.
Well, Diddy Kong Racing, but it involved riding animals.
It was a pitch from an outside studio that was very ignorant as far as who owned the rights to what characters. But, yeah, it is what it is.
It does seem like one of those very... like, I don't want to say obvious because that sounds dismissive of the original trailer, but once that's out there in the world, like, yeah, you could have a racing game where Donkey Kong and his friends ride animals.
Yeah.
It's a very enticing pitch. It's a shame it ultimately didn't go anywhere.
It is such like a giant leap forward as far as doing something different with the mascot racing genre that again, like it's such a natural fit for Donkey Kong. It's something that the fans are so horny for. I guess is that the right? Let's say hungry.
It is something very different for a mascot racer, which I think is a genre that is very prone to stagnate, and that's probably as much as I'll say before I get on my own soapbox.
Yeah, it's just I feel like it's money on the table. It's there for Nintendo when they want to use it, and I'm just like, come on, all you need to do is just take this trailer as the concept. And I know this is not the way Nintendo operates because they have their weird like ethics and ideas of like what is like acceptable for to be as a games developer, and oh no, we can't do this idea because this was someone else's idea. And it's like, bullshit, they're not doing it, so you do it. You have the rights, you have the fucking trademarks to this game. Do it, get it done. I don't care what it takes. Anyway, Donkey Kong Racing, we'll talk about it a lot more until the end of the conversation. Like, even after I'm dead and gone and someone else is running the conversation, you know, in the far future, hopefully, they'll still be talking about Donkey Kong Racing because it is the most orgasmic, like, 50-some seconds for a Donkey Kong fan that's ever been produced. Like, the closest we've come are the Smash Ultimate Reveal trailers. But even then, like, I don't even think they touched this. All right, well, so it's only downhill from here because how can you top Donkey Kong Racing? Well, you can complement it by having a handheld sequel to Diddy Kong Racing, but that does a completely different thing. It focuses exclusively on the planes, which was everyone's favorite vehicle from Diddy Kong Racing. What if there's a whole game where you just flew planes? And that's Diddy Kong Pilot. And so that was going to be for the Game Boy Advance, announced right alongside Donkey Kong Racing.
A very ambitious premise to put a racing game on the Game Boy Advance that's specifically in a vehicle where you have more than one axis of movement.
Right. Knowing what we know now, this E3 2001 build of Diddy Kong Pilot is probably the least interesting, the least fascinating version of the game that we've seen outside of maybe, and this is going to sound bad, but outside of maybe the final release version of Banjo-Pilot, the version we actually got. Now, Banjo-Pilot has its charms. I'm not shit-talking Banjo-Pilot all that much, but Banjo-Pilot was a compromise that was already on top of a compromise. It was a game that ultimately, I think even the team was just like, let's just get it out the door and be done with it. I'm sick of this. So this version of Diddy Kong Pilot, to be clear, this was not the El Dorado Mario cast batshit insane version that was apparently shown at Space World, that like had half a Mario cast in it, had K. Rool like going to the lost city of El Dorado and meeting a genie mole creature. I don't even know.
I really want that version of the game to leak out. That just sounds amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with the notion of putting Mario and Toad and Peach in the game, but it was at least conceptually the most interesting version of Diddy Kong Pilot.
It's kind of the weird trajectory where the final game is a banjo paint over that plays very fast and loose with any kind of like story tissue or connectivity. And the origin point was K. Rool searches for El Dorado.
Yeah. I think being Diddy Kong Racing fans, we were looking forward to what's the story of Diddy Kong Pilot going to be? Ooh. And, you know, it's kind of a joke because when Banjo-Pilot came out, infamously, there was no story, which kind of flew in the face of everything we knew and expected from
And
Rare.
this, from what we've seen of this El Dorado version, it kind of gives the impression the El Dorado stuff is only one facet of like many things going on. Because if I remember right, it's like in a sort of mission specifically for K. Rool in that game.
There were multiple little stories in the game, and I say little stories. It sounds like I'm dismissive. There were multiple, like, batshit insane, like almost J.R.R. Tolkien-esque epics being told with these characters, where like the sheer amount of text when you look at that footage of the K. Rool El Dorado story, like, you're just sitting there, your Game Boy Advance batteries would have drained by the time you got to the end of the exposition, which I love. I absolutely love. Like, the amount of lore drops, like, Cranky is looking for El Dorado, and K. Rool is trying to beat him to it, and it's just, like, globe-trotting adventures with Donkey Kong characters that puts them squarely on the planet Earth. It is something that's just weird. Even you know, in the era of Rare, where they did celebrate lore and continuity much more than Nintendo would with Donkey Kong.
But that wasn't the version at this show.
No.
And at least as far as my understanding of it, like, I think there are, like, in various stages of development, but like 3 different, I'll have the final tally at the end, but the different versions of this game I know about are the El Dorado version, with the weird, like, Mario cast and El Dorado, the various versions of Banjo-Pilot, a version of Diddy Kong Pilot that was very far along in development, I think, post-buyout, because I think Rare was operating under the assumption that Nintendo would obviously still want it. And then the version at this E3 is kind of like in an in-between, which a ROM from, I think, a similar time period is available online, but maybe not the exact one that was at E3, which is sort of like an in-between state of the El Dorado version and the version of Diddy Kong Pilot that's basically the final version of Banjo-Pilot with some spit and polish left to be done.
Yeah. So, like, I know there's like the definitive ROM leak of Diddy Kong Pilot that people on Etsy put on Game Boy Advance cartridges and sell, but it's still pretty janky, and it's not really like a full polished complete game. But that version is basically Banjo-Pilot, but you can really see, like, oh, okay, well, this is the most far along version we've got that's in a working state. Let's just put the Banjo characters on top of that and call it a day. There was, of course, the voxel version of Banjo-Pilot, which was absolutely amazing looking, which we know that it didn't really work with, like, multiplayer or the sheer amount of characters. And so the stampers made the call to sacrifice this amazing version of Banjo-Pilot to just have the same amount of characters. And
it's a shame, because I know that even if it supported like only 2 characters on screen, I would have absolutely adored that version.
It would have been the version with something to say, because as you alluded to, why are you having a Game Boy Advance game where you fly planes when there's no point in flying planes in an environment that's not truly 3D?
Yeah, the thing about Mode 7 style 3D is the plane that's advancing into the horizon is entirely flat.
Yeah. And so there were a couple ideas that the team had to justify this concept. By the way, I just want to point out in a live stream chat, just Andre says that K. Rool went to El Dorado because he knew he was about to lose his golden belly and was trying to be proactive, which I'm all on board with.
I love that.
So initially, the Diddy Kong Pilot team, and I feel bad for the Handheld team and the people who were on Diddy Kong Pilot because the sheer amount of bullshit they had to put up with is staggering. Like they were with this game for 4 years, more than 4 years, but which is a lifetime on a Game Boy Advance game, but. They were initially going to use tilt controls for the Game Boy Advance, and you were going to like tilt the play, tilt the Game Boy Advance, and then you're playing with tilt, and it would be like you're piloting a plane. Clever idea, but I don't think any of us were really enthused about that.
I think about how dim the original Game Boy Advance screen was. At the time that would have been development, and I just kind of have like a shudder inside.
Yeah, it would have been fine maybe on the SP when they had the backlight, like the very sexy, elegant version of the Game Boy Advance that we all know and remember and treasure. But this was not then, and then this was the early Game Boy Advance, which was basically like, why is there no backlight on this? Why? This is so dim. This is dimmer than the Game Boy Color. What are you doing, Nintendo? It was that version of the Game Boy Advance. So yeah, I don't know. But Nintendo apparently hated this. They were like, what's the point? We don't like this. No, we don't like the tilt controls. No. Go back to the drawing board. And so they kept going back to the drawing board. And they kept going back to the drawing board, but I think that before, like, we knew all of that, and when we just had this E3 reveal, this was exciting for me because the utter joy, Cameron, of seeing 2 Diddy Kong Racing sequels announced the very same day. It's a rarity in life that one often doesn't experience, in that this was the only time we've ever gotten 2 Diddy Kong Racing sequels announced the same day. And in that this was the only time we've ever gotten a Diddy Kong Racing sequel announced.
And for that matter, you get to have your cake and eat it too, because you get the Diddy Kong Racing sequel that is more focused on the Donkey Kong franchise and fully gets behind the Donkey Kong branding, and you get Diddy still getting to have a game with his name in the title.
Yeah, so this is how, like, I really enjoyed the contrast here, right? That we got a game that still had the Diddy Kong anchor. Diddy Kong is the main selling point of the game.
Even though Donkey Kong is playable in it.
Exactly. So at this point in the series, you could have Diddy Kong and Donkey Kong be in the same game, but Diddy Kong's going to be the title character of this one. Sure, why not? It made sense. It wasn't weird. It wasn't this point where Diddy Kong just rides on the back of Donkey Kong and he's this perpetual sidekick, because fuck you. No, Donkey Kong, the brand was so robust at this time. And sure, we'll have a Donkey Kong Racing, we'll have a new Diddy Kong Racing, whatever. Fucking anything goes. Woo! It's fucking Mardi Gras 24/7 here on the Donkey Kong universe. Arguably, I would say Diddy Kong Pilot at this presentation had the more stacked cast. Because as you said, it had Dixie Kong over Tiny Kong. Dixie Kong was still the draw here. Like, I know this was coming less than 2 years after Donkey Kong 64, but Dixie Kong, anybody who was in Donkey Kong Country 2, anybody, and she was the anchor of Donkey Kong Country 3, she's still going to matter more than Tiny Kong, right? And it had been a couple of years since we'd seen Dixie Kong. We hadn't seen Dixie Kong since 1997. It had been 4 years since we had seen Dixie Kong. So to get her back, even if it was just in the handheld Diddy Kong Racing sequel was a big deal. We were very excited about Dixie being
we
back.
got proof of life with Dixie in this game.
Yeah, we had Dixie, we got K. Rool in his pilot gear, which continued the running gag of K. Rool and his identity crisis, but in a, just in a very, context, appropriate way.
Yeah. It feels like a course correction for K. Rool's character that unfortunately we later learned they would drop in the later build of Diddy Kong Pilot.
It's why I don't like that later build of Diddy Kong Pilot. I like some aspects of it, but I feel like...
Yeah, I like a lot of it, but there are two major things I don't love, and it is K. Rool being reverted to just wearing his king attire, and Crunch, who was in this version of Diddy Kong Pilot, kind of being... kind of having his identity scrubbed and just being reframed as a generic critter.
Yeah, when I look at the iterations of Diddy Kong Pilot, and I say this is the least interesting version, potentially, but I'm not crazy about their idea of integrating the Mario cast, because that would have really just muddied the waters between Donkey Kong and Mario. And it would have been a self-inflicted wound by Rare, which seems so unlike them.
It's a very questionable choice when Mario Kart Super Circuit was slated to appear on the same hardware and be a very similar kind of game.
Yeah. So I wasn't wild about that. That's why we talk about that build of the game being a weird fever dream, because it still is a weird fever dream. But also, yeah, stripping Crunch of his identity and just having him be Critter or whatever, Kremling, it's just so unlike Rare. And of course, they did the same thing with Jinjo in Banjo-Pilot, which is just, it's not Rare has always been about character and elevating characters, and not falling into the traps that Mario and a lot of Nintendo franchises fall into, where you've just got here in this racing game we're gonna have Koopa Troopa and Toad is gonna become a species.
It really feels to me like it betrays that lack of confidence of, we have to have K. Rool look like King K. Rool, because people might ask questions why he's not dressed that like a king if he looks like that, or people may not know who this Crunch guy is, but they'll know what Kremlings are and what a critter is.
Yeah, it's not trust, again, assuming that, as you said, your fan base has the memory of a goldfish, or that there's not an ingrained Donkey Kong fandom who will appreciate that kind of stuff. So it's weird. It's weird to me. But that's why this version, I think, is my ideal Diddy Kong Pilot, because Crunch, K. Rool as a fucking pilot, but also Cameron, Redneck Kong, and I can't stress this enough that the name Redneck Kong is garbage. I know it's kind of a UK thing there, the British conception of what a redneck is a bit different than the American United States reality of what a redneck is. Because this Redneck Kong is a hillbilly, right? A hillbilly is not a redneck. And I go on this tangent every time, but it matters, damn it.
I mean, it's an understandable mistake, because it's conflating two very similar but also different archetypes of the United States.
Yeah, and the southern regions of the United States. Although there are rednecks. Redneck is a chosen lifestyle, where hillbilly is kind of, you're born into it, right? So anyway, the fact that they introduced a brand new Kong, the fact that it is such a ridiculous archetype, such a just a caricature of, what if we have a gorilla, but he's a hillbilly moonshiner?
The thing I probably remember most about Redneck Kong was someone writing into Scribes asking, like, hey, what's the deal with this hillbilly Kong? What's he about? What's their name? And the response being, oh, don't worry about it. He's been cut already.
Yeah, but E3 2001, we didn't know any of that. All we knew is, baby, we were getting a new Kong. Like, between this and Donkey Kong Racing, right? It was a 1-2 punch. It felt like the most complete two rosters, but this omni roster between the two games. We were getting basically everyone back.
Even the character they were ultimately going to replace Redneck Kong with, like, for a while, in the leaked build of this, they've kind of half phased out Redneck Kong with Candy Kong.
Yeah.
And that in itself would have been really cool. Like, oh, Candy is playable and doing something for the first time.
Even in the Payon games, while Candy showed up, she wasn't playable. So, yeah, that would have been a big deal in and of itself. But, Redneck Kong, you had returning Diddy Kong racers like Crunch and Taj. You had Donkey Kong 64 characters. You had Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3 characters. Like, it was just the most complete package for Donkey Kong fans between these two games. And I loved it. I also loved the weird bifurcation that, yeah, Dixie Kong's going to be in this, Tiny Kong's going to be in this. Fuck it. The future is golden. We have so many Donkey Kong games coming out. We're always going to be making Donkey Kong games. We being Rare. And you're going to see all these characters for years and years and years to come.
It's so weird because this E3 so clearly communicates, like, Donkey Kong is not going anywhere anytime soon. This is...
Yeah. And it really did make the Donkey Kong series, in particular, on that day, feel like the most liberal, freewheeling, anything-goes franchise on the planet. This former sidekick, he's going to be the title character of this game, and his girlfriend's in this game, but her sister's going to be in that game, headlined by Donkey Kong. But Taj, the genie from Diddy Kong's game, he's going to be in Donkey Kong's game. Like, what the fuck? But it's great. It's like I was so over the moon before I knew Donkey Kong could even punch it. It was just fantastic. So Diddy Kong Pilot, of course, as we already said, it became Banjo-Pilot through many, many painful iterations. Eventually, the version we got was ultimately heavily compromised to get it out the door. It was flawed, but it had its charms.
I'm ultimately glad some vision of the project that was Diddy Kong Pilot got out into the world, even if it wasn't everything I would like it to be. At least there was something to show for it, and that's not nothing.
There was, and because
I think Banjo-Pilot is perfectly fine. I know that a lot of us are very down on it when we talk about it in conversation, but a lot of that I think is just that it's not a mega hit or like the best racing ever on any platform, but it's serviceable. It's got some fun stuff. It's not broken.
It's not. And, because they did such a late integration of the Banjo characters over that latter day Diddy Kong Pilot build, we got some great things like Donkey Kong music and Espresso the Ostrich in a Banjo game. And for that alone,
hilariously
it's
conspicuous in some places.
Yeah, for that alone, it's worth it. We don't even talk about, is the announcer in Banjo-Pilot supposed to be TT?
I think it's like a deeper voice. I think they redubbed it, but I think it is supposed to be TT in the Diddy Kong Pilot build, the latter one. Yeah.
So I often wonder, should we count Banjo-Pilot as an appearance by TT? It's one of those gray areas.
He's got a voice modulator to hide that it's him.
Considering how his friend Taj's voice changes just a couple years later, who's to say? So there was a third Donkey Kong game announced on this day, E3 2001, Cameron. And to say that there were two Donkey Kong games announced on the same day is a ludicrous notion here in 2021. But to say that there was once a time when we could have three Donkey Kong games announced back to back to back, that is just like something else entirely, right? Like that is... It would seem like a cruel joke had I not lived this time period myself. So this was also
this
a Game Boy
definitely
Advance
seems
game.
like the most made up of anything we're going to talk about.
It does, especially when we say what became of the game. That, I mean, the whole project sounds like a lark, like some sort of like aristocrats joke, where we're just kind of trying to one-up each other as far as like what became of this game. It's Donkey Kong Coconut Crackers, a Game Boy Advance puzzle game that was announced and obviously was overshadowed by the two racing games. And people on DK Vine, I remember DK Vine staffers even, were shit-talking this game when it was revealed. And I don't know why. I think it's because we didn't realize how good we had it. We had a new rare Donkey Kong game revealed, and people were making fun of it because it was the lesser of the three. I mean, it wasn't as exciting as the other two Donkey Kong games that got announced on the very same day. I don't know. I was excited about Coconut Crackers.
I do remember that. Like, I learned about Coconut Crackers similarly to how I learned about the other games. I think it was in a print magazine, and I do distinctly remember that this was the only one of the three I was not excited for at all. I wasn't like shit talking it. I wasn't thinking, oh, well, that's stupid. It was just, that's not my cup of tea. Which is honestly a really good place for the Donkey Kong franchise to be in, because, I mean, if you're a Mario fan, you don't necessarily love every variation, like genre excursion that Mario partakes in. Some games just may not be for you, and that's fine, because there will be 5 others that are. It's the luxury of choice.
Meanwhile, we in Donkey Kong's fandom were like, well, this might be the only game we get this decade, so we better make the most of it. It was this, like, it had this weird, like, isometric view, a little kind of askewed, but, I'm not somebody who has ever been a puzzle game fan, right? Like, I had Tetris on the NES. Played it quite a bit, but I never really gelled with it. And I think it's because I'm somebody who plays video games and I get excited about lore and characters and world building and really getting to visit this fictional reality. I'm not somebody who plays solitaire on his computer.
I think I have a similar view. Like I think I played like exactly 3 puzzle games that I really gelled with. One is the game that this eventually turned into. The other is Wario's Woods, because it just has the very off-kilter story of Wario deciding to be a huge dick to Toad for a game. Yeah. And Puyo Puyo Tetris, which has like a very fun, silly story to it.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I'm going to play a puzzle game, it's gonna have to be a DKU game, right, to really get me invested. And luckily for us, this game has always been DKU, aside from maybe its initial conception. But it eventually became Donkey Kong branded. Like the concept, I think, was Animal Crackers, or like it was an idea one of the stampers had. And then it was kind of given to the Handheld team to develop. Paul Makachek, friend of DK Vine, what took point on it, and anything like gifting it the Donkey Kong IP at the time at Rare was like a guaranteed way to generate sales. If it's gonna have the Donkey Kong branding, it's gonna sell. So I mean, there's a reason, as I bring up, like Donkey Kong 64 was so financially lucrative, that people who worked on DK64 just to get out the door made more money from DK64 than they did their own games at Rare. So, like, Donkey Kong was like, oh yeah, if we put the Donkey Kong IP on it, it will move some units. So, it became Donkey Kong Coconut Crackers, and it's not until I was sitting about getting this episode ready that it dawned on me, like, looking at screenshots of this, which are all very tiny because E3 2001, like, all the media sites, like, screenshots were uploaded very, very small because our monitors were smaller then.
And granted, it's a Game Boy Advance game, so the resolution's going to be minuscule no matter what you do.
Yeah, but it didn't dawn on me until now that there are some comparisons to be made with this and Donkey Konga, the Donkey Konga series, in that it is a vague Donkey Kong theming on a game, on a style of game that has nothing to do with Donkey Kong. And it's mostly getting by with the Donkey Kong theme by using recognizable backgrounds and characters to kind of loosely tie it in.
I mean, this is the nicest thing I'll probably ever say about Donkey Konga, but I see the logic train with Donkey Konga in a much stronger way than I do this game.
Sure, like, this game had some, like, I don't even, like, really know the general conceit of it by heart. It's something about paint-filled coconuts, dropping.
It's very hard for me to imagine the puzzle mechanics of this working the same way that they do in the game this ultimately became, looking at the screenshots of it, because I genuinely am not sure what's going on in them.
Yeah, and I think it's one thing just seeing static screenshots, and it's another, like, actually playing the game. Like, show me It's Mr. Pants, show me screenshots of that, and I'm not going to be able to decipher that, but if I'm actually sitting down and playing the game and it's walking me through what to do, I'm like, okay, I got it.
If you see an isolated screenshot of It's Mr. Pants, it just looks like Tetris, and that's not how it's played at all.
It's not, and It's Mr. Pants is my favorite puzzle game of all time. Granted, like, I'm a weirdo who has to have puzzle games in the context of a shared universe to really appreciate, but still, like, what this game ultimately became, I adore. I think it's a fantastic title. So much so that I have 100% completed its mobile iteration. That is how much I am dedicated to this game. But I like this idea. Like, 2001, before I even knew that Mr. Pants was going to take it over, I was excited about this. I was like, you know what? This is going to be a nice expansion to the Donkey Kong series. The thing I was excited about the most, Cameron, was looking at the screenshots. So we've got very recognizable Donkey Kong environments. We've got Gorilla Glacier. We've got a Zinger Hive. And it's funny because Donkey Konga would also bring back... Donkey Konga 2, actually, would bring back the Zinger Hives.
These actually remind me a lot of, like, the nonsense scrolling backgrounds in Donkey Konga, now that you've made the comparison.
Yeah, I mean, that is what it reminds me of. There's the Congo jungle, obviously, with very rare styled palm trees. But the thing I was excited about the most, and I remember being giddy about it when I saw it in these screenshots, the Donkey Kong Country era level entrances and exits are represented on these images, on these environments, exactly as they were in that game. So, for example, in Gorilla Glacier, we have got the igloos that you entered and exited in the snow worlds, in the snow levels. The igloos are back. Like such absurd fan service again. Who ever thought we would see the igloos from off of Donkey Kong Country in a Donkey Kong game again? But here they are. Here they are as you remembered them. They're still here. The Gorilla Glacier hasn't been blown up by the Tiki Tak tribe yet, so we still got these igloos here.
And it doesn't seem like there's any practical reason for this to be here. It's entirely aesthetic flavor, which I love. It's not dissimilar to, like, King of Swing having like Candy's save point on the first world map. It doesn't do anything, but it's there for you to point and say, "Oh, I recognize that."
Or it's like in Mario Superstar Baseball having Swanky's Sideshow on the side of Donkey Kong's baseball diamond. It's like cool fan service that fans really adore and appreciate. And it's like, Nintendo, if you're listening to this,
put more igloos in your game.
we Donkey Kong fans love the Gorilla Glacier igloos. Just saying. The other thing I should point out is that a critter. So I think the critter would have been what became the pants. The crayon snake, not the pants snake.
Now that you mentioned in the context of the screenshot that the critter's in, I do think that's the case, because the critter has kind of like a snake-like trail of lava going behind it, it seems like.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's on the lava stage. In the Zinger Hive, it looks like concrete. It's just graying out the environment. But yeah, so in It's Mr. Pants, what this game eventually became, there was a mode where the crayon snake, originally called the pants snake before someone realized, hey, we probably shouldn't call it that. It was kind of this I don't even know how to describe it. Possibly robotic snake-like. I mean, it's
a crayon. It's a moving crayon line, essentially.
Yeah. But it basically eats away the screen, so it's a race against the clock to solve the puzzle. A critter would have utilized the same purpose in this game. So you're trying to beat the critter while you're trying to solve the puzzle. It's pretty cool. I mean, like, the critter, interestingly, looks like the critters from Donkey Kong Country and not Donkey Kong 64. But aside from that, like, I think something about, like, Rambi would have utilized, like, chase away the critter at a certain point. Like, you could use that as like a power up. I'm not really clear on the details. It's been a long time. And of course, ultimately this game was not released. Now, this is interesting because the buyout apparently didn't affect Coconut Crackers. They were going to remove the Donkey Kong branding from it anyway, even if they stayed with Nintendo. Am I incorrect in that? That's what we've heard in recent years. I've heard
I think there have been like conflicting stories on it, but I did like have a concrete tweet from somebody who said they had seen artwork for It's Mr. Pants in the year 2001, which would be before the buyout was even like a twinkle in the eye for this. Yeah. So I do have to believe that at least the idea was on the table, and understandably so, because this is a very weird fit for the Donkey Kong IP, and I think even at a time when relationships with Nintendo were friendly, they may have like kind of tilted their heads at this a bit.
Yeah, but I also I don't see why, because they'll stick Mario in everything. Mario was in a pinball game a couple years after that. Like, I don't see why Donkey Kong also can't have this. I mean, Kirby has this.
I mean, that's maybe not necessarily the case, because I mean, just the fact that these games exist tells me that Rare had so much clout in the late 90s with Nintendo.
Yeah. So I guess before we move on, we should talk about the other weird historical curiosity with Coconut Crackers. How its logo would wind up in a trailer for a shitty CGI cartoon that was direct to DVD called Food Fight. I don't know anything about this because I'm the one who is like not even watching Shrek when everybody's telling me to watch Shrek. But like, Food Fight is apparently notorious amongst the animation community.
I wouldn't call myself a Food Fight expert, but essentially, to sum it up from like my level of knowledge, it's a kind of like troubled production, to say the least. I think at some stage in like it getting developed, like basically most of the movie was lost, and they kind of had to clean up with what they had. I mean, I could be misconstruing that or not giving it the depth it deserves, but I'm sure if you just look up the well-documented story on that, it's kind of a train wreck. And regardless of the production, the final product is not very fondly looked upon. It's generally agreed to be a very ugly movie. But as to why that logo is in the trailer, for starters, I don't think it's in the final movie because, again, troubled production. I think they just flat out lost a lot of that stuff, or would have changed this anyway when they realized Donkey Kong was in a shot in their movie. I suspect that it ended up there because there are licensed products in Food Fight, like actual real foods and stuff. I would wager that like somebody was doing textures for storefront boxes, like, and did like an internet search for crackers or Cracker Box or some such, turned up Donkey Kong coconut crackers, assumed it to be food, and put it on the shelf.
See, I really was hoping that being a troubled production, they were like, wow, I really feel like a rare era Donkey Kong game that was announced at E3 2001. We need to pay tribute to that. But you're probably right. It was probably a misunderstanding of what Donkey Kong coconut crackers actually were. I love the name, though. It's a very alliterative name, Donkey Kong Coconut Crackers. It doesn't even really make sense, does it? Because originally it was Donkey Kong Animal Crackers.
I kind of want it to be a real food now, even though I don't like coconut flavor.
I'm kind of hungry for coconut crackers, yeah. So, of course, as we said, this post-buyout became It's Mr. Pants, barely released by THQ in late 2004. Still stayed DKU, though, because, of course, Mr. Pants debuted in Banjo-Tooie on Boggy's television. So, ultimately, I think this is one I'm not too upset about. I will take It's Mr. Pants over Coconut Crackers.
Mr. Pants is the good timeline for this game, I think. And
it's the one case where the good timeline won out, probably, yeah.
It's kind of like a masterclass in how important characterization and presentation can be for a game. Because if not for Mr. Pants's like wacky, appealing, like just everything, I don't think this game would have been on my radar at all.
No, it is, I think, one of the master classes as far as like the most rare game you could point somebody to, like the one that just oozes the essential id of rare. It's Mr. Pants. Like Grab by the Ghoulies, maybe.
I would say Ghoulies, but I think both are in the same ballpark of if they're not the most like evocative of the like internal identity of Rare, they definitely feel like the two most indulgent Rare games.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
like just a visceral feeling of like somebody was having fun making this.
Yeah, and I think, as much as I would have adored Coconut Crackers and played the hell out of it, and E3 2001, I didn't know any better, I think ultimately, yeah, I am happier with It's Mr. Pants and what it means for the DKU. And I think it's more important than just having a Donkey Kong game that's a puzzle game. I think It's Mr. Pants expands the DKU and gives it an interesting little corner that's beloved by the hardcore of the hardcore. So yeah, we won out.
A game starring a website mascot.
Who is an underwear designer / model / game show host who's been given his own corner of the UK because he's just so beloved by the populace, by the crown, who's fathered an illegitimate child with a neighborhood pie baker, and it's all known and everybody's cool with it because it's Mr. Pants. All right. The fourth DKU game that was revealed by Rick. Good Lord. The fourth DKU game that was...
We're not even... Like, this isn't even the last one. My God.
Yeah. The fourth DKU game that was revealed by Rare at E3 2001 was not a Donkey Kong game, surprisingly enough. It was a Banjo-Kazooie game. And it was Banjo-Kazooie Grunny's Revenge for the Game Boy Advance. How exciting was it to have a handheld banjo game revealed? This is something that I wasn't quite sure would ever really happen. It felt like Banjo-Kazooie was the domain of the consoles.
It's wild. So I think I was even though I played the Donkey Kong Country trilogy as a kid, I think I was too young to really grasp the notability of like this being a game, those being games that quote unquote looked 3D on 16-bit hardware and how that blew everybody's mind. I think that was the reaction I had, or at least that was the kind of reaction I had to seeing an early screenshot of Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge and thinking, holy shit, this looks like an N64 game on a Game Boy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very pretty game. It's gorgeous. To this day, I love looking at the screenshots for it. It's top down. It's basically Banjo-Kazooie by way of Conker's Pocket Tales, but it works.
It should not work as well as it does.
It works so well. They're able to replicate the fundamental framework of Banjo-Kazooie in a top-down game. And it's something that, we see today in Yooka-Laylee and Impossible Lair. It's overworld, very evocative of Grunny's Revenge. And I love Grunny's Revenge. I could go on and on about Grunny's Revenge. I feel like Grunny's Revenge is the essential link. It is basically the lore dump of the Banjo-Kazooie series, where it explains so much of the backstory. It explains so much of the world, that corner of the DKU that the console games don't get into. It's basically the Similarian for Banjo-Kazooie nerds, right? And the weird thing, though, is that its place in the canon, its place as an interquel between Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, wasn't the original intention. As announced at E3 2001, Banjo-Kazooie Grunny's Revenge was more along the lines of the Kelvin timeline for Star Trek, the J.J. Abrams Star Trek trilogy, where it was an alternate sequel that happened instead of Banjo-Tooie. And that's a weird angle to take for your game. For your third Banjo-Kazooie game, we're going to say, all right, but hear me out. What if the last Banjo-Kazooie game never happened at all and things transpired differently, like butterfly effect style? What if this is what happened? So already we're playing with alternate timelines.
Man, as early as 2001 were people saying they wish Tooie didn't happen.
Oh.
I say that I love Banjo-Tooie to death. I'm one of its apologists. I love that game.
That's why I had you on that Never-Ending Spotlight series, Cameron.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, the final version of that game is the angle of it being an interquel. Makes so much sense to me that I have to wonder. We've seen vague hints of how the vision of Grunny's Revenge evolved over time. And I kind of wonder if this is something that kind of slowly became apparent as the design evolved and characters and events were tweaked and they reached a point where it became very obvious we're not completely sending the plot off the rails. There's no reason that this can't just be a mini story that writes itself right before Banjo-Tooie and doesn't contradict anything except for some incidental dialogue.
Yeah, I wonder if they went with the alternate timeline idea, which is so weird, and it was weird back then. But I wonder if they went with that because it was the first Banjo-Kazooie game to not be developed by the Banjo-Kazooie team. And so it was kind of like this Nintendo respect thing. Like, we don't want to trample, we don't want to pee in your pool. We want to like stay in our lane. And so we'll play with the characters, but in an ambiguously non-canon way, so it doesn't affect anything you might want to do in a future Banjo-Kazooie game.
It was a time travel game, so maybe they thought it operated on like end game rules, where you you just set up a new timeline by changing anything in the past, and it's irreconcilable.
Yeah, but you're right. Like, it works so well as an interquel. It doesn't trample anything. It only enriches our understanding of both Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, that they made the right call. But it's interesting to me, like, this notion that what if Grunty's sisters never rescued her and she essentially like completely like was left to rot and die underneath the boulder.
I also love that the solution to get Grunty from out from under the boulder is to send her soul up to inhabit a robot. And the logic of like Klungo, you could have built a forklift with those parts and just got the boulder up.
It's like, why does the professor on Gilligan's Island just not build a boat, right? Like, why doesn't he just fix the SS Minnow? Why is he trying all this elaborate chicanery with his knowledge when he could just build a boat? But yeah, it's funny because you can clearly see like the alt timeline influence in Grunty's Revenge with the notion that Grunty's ghost leaves her body and inhabits a robot, and that's Klungo's solution. When originally it was she dies. Her sisters never come, she dies, now Grunty's a ghost, and so the only solution is to have her ghost possess a mechanical body.
It could even inform like Jiggy Wiggy and Honey Bee's roles in the game, because maybe instead of their younger selves, it didn't really matter who they were because this was an alternate universe. Yeah.
It's butterfly effect, dominoes falling in a different direction. Which is cool. The thing is, like, we were excited about this. It wasn't like, oh, how dare they have an alt universe version of Banjo and Kazooie. It was like, whoa, the DKU is expanding so much, it's now a multiverse. Like, we were on board with anything, right? Like, nothing could have rained on our parade. And even though this, like, was going to be in a timeline where Banjo-Tooie didn't happen, it was still DKU. It was still part of the narrative framework. Like, it would just be, like I said, like something like the Kelvin timeline, where it still matters. It's in its own lane so much. So, ultimately they made the right call. It works so well as an interquel, and I can't imagine Banjo-Kazooie lore without it as an interquel.
This is also a weird one to talk about after the previous three games we discussed, because I feel like by and large the vision for Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge was completely untouched by the buyout and any of the like politics around it.
Yeah, for probably two reasons. One, it didn't involve Donkey Kong, and two, it was probably the farthest along in development, so
like, initial screenshots of this look different, but not that different.
Yeah, and we know it had been in development for the Game Boy Color. Like, stuff has leaked since then. Grunny's Curse was the original title. So, we didn't get it announced until this E3 with this deluge of games from the Handheld team. And, you know, all they had to really do once the buyout became apparent was secure somebody else to distribute it, and that was ultimately THQ. And this was the one game THQ was happy to promote and actually manufacture several thousand cartridges for it, because we get to distribute. We get to publish a Banjo-Kazooie game. Yes, please.
And I still literally didn't know it was out until I saw it on the shelf.
Yeah. I mean, there were no TV ads for it, but there were print ads. There was a little bit of a push from THQ.
We did get a cool poster out of it. I'll thank THQ for that. That poster was cool.
It wasn't the case of something like It's Mr. Pants, which was only available, like, I think in Niagara Falls on, like, the first full moon, or the last full moon of 2004. But, yeah, so, yeah, Banjo-Kazooie Grunny's Revenge was released in autumn 2003. As a side note, it was also the last game to utilize the Rareware branding. It was the last game to be released before Grab by the Ghoulies, their first Xbox game, which had the Rare rebrand and moved away from the 90s era Rare logo. So, Grunny's Revenge, I love it, and it's the one game coming out from this first four we've discussed that basically we got intact and nothing altered, and the promise was fulfilled more or less. But there was also another game that isn't DKU so much, but it was still by the Handheld team. It was still announced at this E3 that I feel like we should pay a little bit of lip service to, because at the time we were uncertain if it was going to be DKU. It could have been DKU. A lot of people think it should be DKU to this day, if it wasn't for our completely inane way of parsing out what is and isn't DKU.
It's in the physical universe, but that's not what the Donkey Kong universe is.
Are you confused yet? It's Saberwolf. Saberwolf for the Game Boy Advance. Which was part of this big push coming out of Banjo-Tooie. They reintroduced the character of Saberman in Banjo-Tooie, thawed him out. He had been kind of on ice for 20 years or so, and they were going to try to take this like early Rare mascot IP back when their Ultimate Play the game and try to make him work on Nintendo in the new millennium.
I think to sum up the place Saberman was in the public conscious is to say what my reaction was when I found out about this game, seeing a screenshot in the magazine, which was, oh, they're making a game starring the guy from Banjo-Tooie.
Pretty much, yeah.
I think it may even be the same 3D model of him, like with the mitten hands.
Yeah, you see like his appearance in Banjo-Tooie, and he mentions he might ride a dolphin, and it's clearly setting up. Rare had ambitious plans. Maybe we were gonna get a GameCube game starring Saberman, but first they were gonna do this Game Boy Advance game to kind of test the waters a little bit. And the way everything shook out, Saberman never really gained any cultural foothold. There was this game that was ultimately published by THQ, but it only had like slightly above its Mr. Pants level distribution. I think my local GameStop got one copy in, and that was it. And it was easier to find than It's Mr. Pants, but just barely.
Yeah, I think I ended up buying it secondhand years after the fact, but I think it was a very similar situation. I think I maybe saw it in a store once, didn't buy it, and then never saw it again. But I guess since we're talking about E3, something like I looked up an early footage of Saberman in advance of this, like in advance of talking about it, and a very glaring difference between this and the game that we got. Like, it is very similar. I think this is another Banjo-Kazooie Grunny's Revenge situation where we, even if things changed, mostly got the vision of the game that would have hit regardless. But a key difference is that the sort of animal friends that Saberman relies on in the final game look like they're in largely a lot of them seem to be just like actual like traps and weapons. Like there's footage of Saberman dropping a bomb, which I think in the final game became the boomer, the kangaroo that explodes. Like I think you can kind of see the signs even this early of what they were running into with Saberman Stampede, which was like, oh, this like great white hunter archetype no longer works with our modern sensibilities. We need to find a new angle for Saberman so this doesn't get extremely uncomfortable.
Yep. and even now, like, just the iconography of Saberman, this British man in a pith helmet, like it definitely brings to mind some unsavory historical implications that, you know, weren't necessarily at the forefront of our minds even during the aughts when we were holding out hope for Saberman Stampede. So it makes sense to me that Arthur Pendragon, became the ultimate play of the game character that would have the career resurgence vis-a-vis Sea of Thieves. But yeah, they really gave it a go for Saberman. And
speaking of which, if you want to see like Arthur Pendragon examine some questionable parts of his own past, read the free comics starring him on Comixology.
Hey, that's a plug. But yeah, so we thought maybe, you know, Saberman, even though he himself wasn't a DKU character, his relationship with the DKU as sort of like a friend of the DKU, we thought maybe this game would maybe have some sort of cameo that would push it over the edge. It ultimately did not, but we were still kind of like keeping one eye open on this, even though we already had like how many games to focus on this E3. So it was kind of like, oh yeah, that's also cool. We'll get to that maybe eventually.
It's kind of a shame. In like any other year, this would not have flown under the radar.
Yeah.
It just happened to be with the exact group of games for this to be like near the bottom of notability, which is unfortunate because it is a really good game for how far it would have flown under the radar.
Yeah, it's just
like arguably, I think Rare's best game on the GBA. At least Lee Loveday has said so.
Yeah, I mean, I love Grunny's Revenge, and I love It's Mr. Pants, so it's hard. Like, I will fight those. I will fight that opinion to the death, but also, like, I have not played Saberwolf as much as I have those two games. So
I'd also be remiss not to point out it's probably the GBA game most similar to Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair.
Yeah. So that's another reason why we should check it out as an honorable mention at the very least. It would make for good conversation at some point. But again, when in a slower news period, like that's the problem with Saberwolf, is there's always something else going on that really prohibits me from really giving it its due. So it is what it is. But there is another rare game at this E3, Cameron, and so this one wasn't a reveal. Like, so I'm not saying like we had 6 reveals to this game, but I
think an aspect of this was a reveal. It's weird.
It was a coming out party for a new persona for an already announced Rare game. So Dinosaur Planet had already been around as a game. We knew that was coming, but in the lead up to E3 2001, there were rumors. There were so many rumors about Nintendo and Rare possibly reworking Dinosaur Planet together and making it a Star Fox game. And we weren't happy about that, Cam. Oh, we were as salty about that as I got about the Billy Mitchell being referenced in Donkey Kong Country Returns. It was like I wasn't one of the DK Vine staffers that was the most enthusiastic about Dinosaur Planet. I was looking forward to it. I was intrigued by it, especially this notion of a Diddy Kong Racing prequel that's this sci-fi fantasy adventure on an alien planet that retcons the boss character of Tricky as an extraterrestrial dinosaur. I was all on board for that, obviously. Who wouldn't be? But it wasn't like something I was as obsessive about as other DK Vine staffers. So I wasn't as emotionally invested as if that game got torpedoed and became a Star Fox game. I would have been upset, but I wouldn't have been devastated, I guess, is the way to put it.
And in 2001, that was not even on my radar because the Star Fox Adventures was the first I had heard of Dinosaur Planet at that point. I just was not paying attention to any news regarding Dinosaur Planet until the news came that it was getting retooled into a Star Fox game.
Yeah. And of course, for more on Dinosaur Planet, see the season premiere of the Kongversation, season 9 premiere. Cameron and I talk about the leaked Dinosaur Planet ROM.
I have to say, now that we have a greater picture than ever of the tumultuous, very long and winding road to Star Fox Adventures from Dinosaur Planet, if I had just taken it as assumption that Star Fox Adventures started as Star Fox Adventures and was a GameCube original title, I'd still be very blown away by the shift from what was shown off at E3 2001 and what we ultimately got, because this game got a huge glow up from what was shown in 2001.
Yeah.
And that's not to say what was shown in 2001 was ugly, but it wasn't the absolute visual treat that the final game is. I think they've added so many little extra touches, and Fox doesn't have fur in this version. That's the most notable thing.
Which, when you think about Star Fox Adventures, you think about that fur, right? Star Fox Adventures is weird in that it was a relatively early GameCube game, came out about a year into the GameCube, but visually, I think is maybe one of the best looking GameCube games. Certainly, it was one of the better looking games on any Nintendo system for years after the fact.
It makes me it gives me secondhand frustration on behalf of the developers, because they clearly learned this dev kit inside and out to do some of the visual tricks that are in Star Fox Adventures, and then immediately had to discard it.
Yep, it'd be their only GameCube game. But anyway, going into this E3, there was a lot of nerves. They're going to make it a Star Fox game. Miyamoto is killing Dinosaur Planet. Because this was really that period where we viewed Miyamoto as this weird antagonist. When now, of course,
you're too hard on yourself. It's not like you photoshopped his head on the Grim Reaper.
I didn't do that. All right, I just worked on the site that did it. It's funny because now we know Miyamoto is a champion for Donkey Kong Country. Even
he's keeping the Reaper away from Cranky.
Yeah, I think on the DK Vine forum, talking about all the recent rumors, I think it might have been Alf. Alf with the Jimmy Fallon avatar. Don't ask that said the biggest character development, anime style character development is Miyamoto becoming the champion for Donkey Kong Country. That's not verbatim, but it said something along those lines. And yeah, I agree, because back then we viewed Miyamoto as the one who was conspiring against the Donkey Kong universe, because his precious arcade Donkey Kong was being rewritten, and it was, and he was coming for Dinosaur Planet.
I love the view that Miyamoto has apparently taken on Cranky, because honestly, if he were upset with the direction that Cranky Kong's character took, I would completely understand, because they kind of took his signature baby and made him a whiny old man.
Yeah.
But the fact that he loves it makes it just kind of heartwarming.
Who knew, right? Who knew? Especially back in 2001. But, and of course, people evolve too. I'm sure Miyamoto did feel some professional rivalry with Rare during this era, but people grow, people mature. We matured. Miyamoto, if he did have any problems, he's certainly over them now. So, that we have to let each other grow, as I often like to say.
Sometimes people have a bad day.
I've had plenty of them over my my 21 years on DK Vine. But yeah, so we didn't know what to expect. And so sure enough, Dinosaur Planet was now Star Fox Adventures, Dinosaur Planet. But I remember distinctly when Fox McCloud mentioned Tricky in-game footage, said the name Tricky, there was much rejoicing to be had, because even if we viewed the thing as a big old compromise, like, oh, we didn't want this to be a Star Fox game. We wanted Dinosaur Planet. We wanted it to be its own IP. Even though we weren't wild about that, well, if it has to be that, at least it still has a young Tricky in it, and at least it's still DKU.
Yeah, this version of the game is really interesting to look back to now that we have the N64 version to compare it to, because now I look at it and I see way more connective tissue now that I have a frame of reference for what the very early version of Fox looked like on the N64. And I can see, like, the early HUD artwork with the hand-drawn Fox and, like, all these little design cues that, like, got tweaked in between in this, like, mid-stage. It's really fascinating to track.
Yeah. And, you know, ultimately, of course, Star Fox Adventures sans the Dinosaur Planet subtitle, because it would be one game. It wouldn't be the start of a new series like we thought at E3 2001. Like, oh, Star Fox Adventures : Walrus World and Octopi Planet. I realize octopi is not the correct term for plural octopuses, but just that's what the joke we had back then. Like imagine if every single Diddy Kong Racing boss is a retcon to the Star Fox series. We were on board with it.
Walrus World, I remember being thrown around a lot.
It didn't take long for us to adapt to this new way of thinking, and we even viewed it as like, well, Rare reinvented Donkey Kong. Now they get to reinvent Star Fox and bring it in.
They shot themselves in the foot by bringing Dragon Rock into the first game, though.
Yeah, but then the buyout happened. Then Nintendo said, "We're not going to buy you, Rare," and then Xbox said, "Oh, but we will." And so
It so genuinely thought like the Star Fox Adventures name was establishing like a side series that would continue to get sequels and iterations. And I don't doubt that if Rare had stayed with Nintendo, that would have been a conversation at some point, because you do kind of get the sense that some of the things that are underexplored in Star Fox Adventures, that there's like lamentation that they didn't get to draw on further, like the R-Wing levels in Star Fox Adventures are kind of bare bones, but they're also very competent, very clearly made by people who understood the appeal of Star Fox and probably could have been developed into something more in-depth if they were given a second pass at it.
Yeah, I can definitely see this alternate timeline where Grunty's sisters never come to rescue her, where we have like Rare staying with Nintendo, right? And maybe Namco still develops the traditional Star Fox game for the GameCube, Star Fox Assault or whatever it is, but it's more like its own thing. You know, maybe Crystal and the events of Star Fox Adventures are still referenced or appear, but I can see like Rare pushing forward with a sequel to Star Fox Adventures, and we just have basically concurrent Star Fox games in this franchise, and Rare's corner, and then the more traditional mainline Star Fox corner. Like that would have been exciting. I think that would have been the best of both worlds for the Star Fox brand. And it's, you know,
yeah, especially because the Star Fox brand has kind of had this problem with maintaining an identity, because there you only get so many Star Fox games. They kind of try to be everything at the same time.
Yeah.
In terms of like, we have to be the sequel and the experiment in the same game.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I love Star Fox Assault. Star Fox Assault is weirdly enough, like I think it's a fantastic follow-up to Star Fox Adventures. It's just not, again, the ideal I would have thought of at E3 2001. So we can regret how things shook out, but at the end of the day, we did get Star Fox Adventures released in September of 2002. It's one of my favorite. It's in my top 10 favorite games to this day. I unabashedly adore it.
It kind of exists somewhere toward like the middle upper end of the scale in terms of like with games that I think were virtually unaltered by the buyout, with Grunny's Revenge at the top, and games that were extraordinarily affected by the buyout with Donkey Kong Racing at the bottom. Star Fox Adventures, we know, was largely intact, but just kind of had the unfortunate constraint that it absolutely had to be out the day before the buyout.
Yeah. I also noticed the gears in your head turning when you said scale. I think subconsciously you were debating whether to do a pun just there, and you ultimately decided not to do it. So, I felt your pain though. Yeah. So Star Fox Adventures, I loved it. What could have been, but that's the case with all of this stuff. But ultimately, like we got tricky. We got our weird Diddy Kong Racing sci-fi fantasy prequel. It just retconned the entirety of the Star Fox series as a Diddy Kong Racing prequel, which is a little fun fact that most Nintendo fans still don't realize. Anyway, so there was actually a 7th rare game. No, I'm joking.
Well, they did play a part in this next one.
Yeah, a little bit. So, yeah, there were cameo games, as there always are at these E3s. There were cameo games, cameo appearances by the Kongs. But I think what's interesting here is, there would be cameo games all throughout the aughts at every E3, but the caliber of the cameo game, it's not often, right, that we get Super Smash Brothers and Mario Kart at the same E3, even if it was an very early iteration of this Mario Kart. It is a
weird, you can tell how weird E3 2001 was when maybe like Super Smash Brothers Melee was at this E3, and it's one of the last things we talk about.
Well,
sometimes Smash Brothers is all you get if you're lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, this was also, too, before Smash Brothers. Melee is the game, right, that made Smash Brothers Smash Brothers.
100%. This was the game that made Smash Brothers was a big deal, but this is when it kind of like elevated itself into this upper echelon of being the like marquee Nintendo, not just game but series.
Yeah, like Smash N64 was sort of a big deal. It was cool. It was kind of a novelty, but the entire Nintendo ecosystem didn't really hinge upon Smash Brothers until the success of Melee, until Melee changed everything. So at this point, we were viewing Super Smash Brothers Melee as, oh, it's cool, Smash is getting a sequel. It wasn't like, here we go, everyone, let's start fighting, let's start arguing about which characters deserve to appear in this. That wasn't part of the culture yet.
I think the conversation was mostly Smash Brothers is getting a sequel, and my god, it looks gorgeous.
It looks so much better than the N64 game.
Like, Super Smash Brothers looked like an N64 game, but it was also one of the uglier N64 games, to be honest. But almost certainly owing to how many things they had to have on screen without chugging it horribly. But Melee was kind of this complete about-face where it was not only much better looking than the original, but it was just this visual showcase of what the GameCube could do. And I think honestly kind of serving as like your sneak preview of what all your favorite franchises were going to look like on the GameCube, like in like implied marketing speak.
Yeah, it really was a clever way. Like, whenever I needed to get a Donkey Kong fix, playing the Congo Jungle stage, what we now know as Congo Falls, was how I did it. I would boot that up, and I would just imagine. This was like, even early on, before the buyout, I would imagine, like, this is what Rare's Donkey Kong platformer could look like.
With no context, like, my first exposure to this game was just screenshots of the like reveal trailer, which was kind of repurposed as the intro to the game, or maybe was always intended to be that. So I would see these out of context screen grabs of like, holy shit, that's a hyper detailed Fox McCloud fighting a hyper detailed Wolf O'Donnell in deep space, and that looks incredible. And yeah, that was an FMV, but I didn't know that at the time. Or Ridley
so
and
funny.
Samus, or even.
Yeah. It's so funny because you mentioned, some E3 smashes all we get. And that wasn't really the case with E3 2019 so much, but really the big takeaway from E3 2019, which we all attended, was the reveal of Banjo and Kazooie in Super Smash Bros. And I remember E3 2001, we had so much going on, Cameron, that we didn't really have time to dwell on the fact that in none of these screenshots did Diddy Kong appear, because that was what the big one from this sequel. Super Smash Brothers for the Nintendo 64, we were already thinking about the sequel, and we were like, well, Diddy's obviously got to be in it, right? Diddy Kong is going to be in it. You had Luigi and Jigglypuff as secondary characters for their respective franchises as bonus secret characters.
And Peach and Bowser were among the first revealed for the sequel.
Yeah, so we were like, well, yeah, Diddy's gotta be in it. How could you not have Diddy Kong in Super Smash Bros. Melee? So we weren't sweating this so much. It's weird to say, given how much anxiety and angst and anger Smash inspired in Brawl, and especially Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 3DS and Wii U. But
yeah, just the turn where, like, Diddy wasn't in Melee, but I don't think it felt like a huge deal that he wasn't, the way that it felt like a huge deal when it just seemed like he wasn't going to be in Brawl. Yeah.
Before Diddy was revealed in Brawl, and it's just like, all right, if Diddy's not in this, what the hell is going on? And that was like the height of Jungle Beat and that mistranslated interview about the characters not being fresh enough, and just all of that.
There was
bullshit.
This like attached baggage, like assumption that like Smash Brothers Brawl was going to represent like the internal ethos of Nintendo, and if Diddy Kong is not in this game, it means that Diddy Kong is just dead and never going to be in anything ever again. But with Melee, it was just, oh, he wasn't in this, well, we'll get him next time.
In our defense, I mean, I think that would be an accurate assessment to make, because Smash is really the kingmaker.
It shows the evolution of Smash Brothers in the public consciousness, where it became the thing that was reflective of the environment around it to the thing that creates the environment around it.
Yeah, I mean, the success of Melee is what turned Super Smash Bros. Into the kingmaker. Melee itself wasn't the kingmaker, but Melee being such a brilliant game that everyone played like endlessly is what turned Super Smash Bros. Brawl onward into the event that Smash became.
I think it's fair to say it's one of the biggest video game sequels in terms of sheer like expansion in scope that to have ever existed.
Yeah, and to this day, like, people hold up Melee as the definitive Smash Brothers. I think Ultimate has finally like touched and surpassed Melee. But yeah, I was in agreement. Like, Brawl and Super Smash Bros. 4 all felt like they failed to recapture the sheer elegance that was Super Smash Bros. Melee. And I finally got that feeling back with Ultimate. And I have to point out, too, I felt that when I first played Ultimate, at E3 2018 before we knew K. Rool or Banjo and Kazooie were in it. So it's not bias speaking. It's just like, oh wow, this feels great.
I think it's the situation where I do think Ultimate is like finally the, like I can say with confidence, the better game, at least to me. Like we've reached a Smash Brothers that goes far above and beyond and does so much right. But I do think it's not necessarily the quality, but just the sheer leap from 64 to Melee was so humongous that it kind of colors everything after it, because how do you make a stride that big again?
And I don't even remember, like there's so much going on, and it's so weird that a Super Smash Brothers game is like down the rung sixth most important thing to talk about out of an E3. But did we know that Rare employees were voicing the Star Fox characters, or like didn't that come out till later?
I have no idea. I honestly, the funny thing, I didn't even know it when I played the game, because I just remember playing the adventure mode, my mind being blown when the Star Fox characters like started coming in and talking during that cutscene, but also kind of feeling weird that their voices were like very clearly different. Like thinking, did Slippy sounds like he has a sore throat? And then I'd find out
Slippy sounds like a drunk squirrel.
He sounds like a sore throat because he's Conker.
yeah. And the funny thing is, once you hear it, once you listen for Conker, it's so weird. It's just like, what? Conker, get out of Slippy's mouth.
Conker is just a liquored up Slippy, is what he is.
But that was really cool to like to have that, because Super Smash Bros. Melee being revealed same time as Star Fox Adventures had its coming out, and then to have Super Smash Bros. Melee that autumn have the basically soft introduction of Rare's version of Team Star Fox.
Yeah, it even like primed you for the character development, that not at this E3, but when the game came out, like it primed you for the character development they were going to make in Star Fox Adventures. Like the trophy descriptions would throw in lines like, oh, Peppy's getting a little bit older and he sits out on missions now.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how much Super Smash Bros. Melee feels like a very, very loose, soft prequel to Star Fox Adventures. So much so that I remember playing it and like having Donkey Kong fight Fox McCloud on the Great Fox and just thinking, wow, Fox is about to meet Tricky.
Even just that it was the first game to come out with or post Star Fox 64 with like a more realistic take on Fox. Like you had the Super Nintendo game where they were all realistic puppets, but you saw that visual shift back in the other direction again.
But yeah, Smash Melee, sixth most important game, whatever. There was also early, this was before it was Double Dash, but there was early footage of Mario Kart, basically as a proof of concept to say, hey, Mario Kart's coming. But it's a much looser proof of concept than even Donkey Kong Racing was, right? It was just Mario and Luigi racing standard karts in like this void. And this is kind of standard protocol for Nintendo whenever they just want to show like, hey, these are characters running on this hardware. This game's coming eventually. It's not going to look anything like this, but it's coming. They do this quite often.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't terribly far off, I think, from the quote-unquote Banjo 3E for GameCube trailer that's really just a bunch of Rare characters all on screen at once running down a valley.
I had to look that up before, because I was like, was that shown at this E3? It was shown at Space World. I think Space World 2000, maybe. But yeah, I mean, that's how crazy this E3 was that I couldn't remember if that proof of concept Banjo Hard Day's Night running through the canyon style montage was part of this E3.
I honestly can't tell if like the Mario and Luigi models in this are, I don't know if they're repurposed from Super Smash Bros. Melee, but they certainly look way more like that than they do any other rendering of Mario and Luigi we'd see on the GameCube. Like, I think it was just so much a twinkle in the eye at that point that it seems like kind of throwing assets at the wall just to assure you that this is going to be here. This is like the glowing Metroid Prime 4 logo is what this is.
Yeah. It's funny because there's nothing in this early proof of concept that even points to the weird pastel plasticky look of Double Dash. And
it's very realistic looking, like, I mean, you know, realistic asterisk on the GameCube. And they're like they're driving identical purple carts and across like looks like just an asphalt texture that says Mario Kart on it over and over again.
Yeah.
It's very bare bones.
It looks more similar to Mario Kart 64 than ultimately what Double Dash would become. So, you know, this was barely revealed. This is kind of just, again, proof of concept, but it's just funny to me how they announced Mario Kart, right? This same E3 that they announced Donkey Kong Racing. And I just remember Mario Kart 64 was still held in high esteem at DK Vine. Like, we still were like, yeah, Mario Kart 64 was a solid good time. Even though Diddy Kong Racing utterly obliterated it in every aspect, we still like and appreciate Mario Kart 64. We're game for a sequel in the GameCube. Please, yes, but we were also just like, who cared? We Donkey Kong Racing, Diddy Kong Pilot, like, oh yeah, you have a Mario Kart game coming out for the GameCube too. That's cool, but I can't focus any mental brain power on it right now. You know, maybe if you show Donkey Kong in it instead of Mario and Luigi, who cares about those wankers? But like, it's just like the sheer amount of giddiness we had and the wealth, the bounty that was before us. It really just, like, if they announced Mario Kart 9 at this E3, that would be a big story. We'd be talking about that for weeks, months, up until release. We'd speculate, we'd analyze screenshots. Even if it was just a proof of concept like this, here, fuck off. It's a Mario Kart game, but we have Donkey Kong Racing now. We don't need Mario Kart. Anyway, I can't, like, were there other cameo games? Was Mario Golf shown off here? I don't even, those are the big ones. After this, it gets very nebulous from my memory and doing research, because you try to cross-reference what was shown off at E3 2001, and you get some contradictory information. Like, I had to look up Donkey Kong Plus. Was that shown at E3 2001? I think that was shown at E3 2002. Donkey Kong Plus, the game that became Mario vs. Donkey Kong.
Yeah, I think like every other cameo game, like, honestly, even Mario Kart Double Dash, because this is so just not Mario Kart Double Dash at all. I filed distinctly in like post buyout, because that's when you started to get the Donkey Kong models that Rare plainly had nothing to do with.
I know, like, Mario Golf was announced before buyout.
Was Super Circuit at this E3?
Super Circuit must have been at this E3 because it saw release later that summer. But again, like, Super Circuit, yeah, that's exciting. It's a Mario Kart game, but we had Diddy Kong Pilot announced. Like, I think we were excited about Super Circuit, but also there was a lot of weird contradictory information about Super Circuit at the time, where the media was treating it as a remake of Super Mario Kart, just like a port of Super Mario Kart, but with the Mario Kart 64 cast.
It's one of those things that's, like, in a way technically true, but also the most dismissive possible thing you could say about Super Circuit.
Yeah, in that these Super Mario Kart tracks were unlockable bonuses in the game, but it had all new tracks. Like, it had the framework of Super Mario Kart, but it was a new game.
I genuinely remember a time when Super Circuit was the Game Boy Advance game I was looking the most forward to.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first Game Boy Advance game I got. I got it with my Game Boy Advance, the early non-SP Game Boy Advance that I never touched once I got an SP. But yeah, I mean, again, Super Circuit. I think Super Circuit 2, the proximity of release, we knew it was coming, and it was just less exciting to talk about than Diddy Kong Pilot,
Well, yeah,
Crunch, and Dixie.
aside from being a Mario Kart game on a handheld, which was in itself really cool, it wasn't the bold new frontier.
No,
it was
and
the familiar thing you like that's very cool, and not the thing you've never seen before that... I mean, aside from it, again, being on portable, which was also very, very cool.
I definitely feel like at this point, the novelty of Donkey Kong appearing in these games had completely worn off.
Oh, absolutely.
So we were viewing everything with just this, really? And even like Mario Kart, like again, we were excited about Mario Kart, but it couldn't generate the same enthusiasm that, oh my God, they're putting Rare's Donkey Kong in Mario Kart 64. That level of excitement in late 96 generated versus 2001. Oh yeah, Donkey Kong's going to be in this Mario Kart.
He's just a mainstay now, and they're owned by the same company, so it's not even like they sorted out the rights issues to get the guest character back. It's...
Yeah. Well, Cameron, we do have a phone call to take about E3 2001, and then we'll sum it all up. We'll sum up this nostalgic trip down memory lane, and hopefully set the stage for E3 memories to come this year.
Hey, Hyle. Hey, Cameron. This is Jake. My first time calling in. You might know me better as Sponge the Squid. I'm this guy you sometimes retweet art from on Twitter. I had the urge to call in. I wanted to have some thoughts to give about Donkey Kong Racing. So, as far as E3 2001, I never caught it. I was way too young to be keeping up with game news at that time. Around that age, I was mostly just playing Donkey Kong games. As those years went on, I was getting into the Game Boy Advance remakes. And I think it was the first E3, around the first E3 I saw was 2006, I think, was the one when they showed the Brawl trailer. That same year, I had discovered the Donkey Kong Racing trailer, not knowing it was something that was, canceled years prior. Blew my mind. And it taught me a very, valuable lesson at a young age to not really take things for granted. Because years prior, I was just, not aware of what Rare was as a studio and what was going on behind the scenes, and just expecting, when a Donkey Kong game might show up on the GameCube or the Wii. And nowadays, I look back at a lot of these games that I might have had some sort of, angst or a bitterness to, like Jungle Beat. I look back to them really fondly, and I feel the same way about this trailer. It's like a little glimpse at what could have been. And I know some people might look at that and think, wow, I wish I never even saw this. Now I'm going to want it the rest of my life. But for me, it's a case of I'm grateful to have seen it because, with Rare getting bought, it could have been a chance where they didn't even show a trailer and we would have never known. So, it's really interesting to see that sort of development of what they were doing right before they, had switched studios. But anyway, that's basically all I wanted to say. I hope you both have a good rest of the day, and take care.
Well, thank you for the call, Jake. And I think that's a beautiful way of looking at this. It's pretty much framing it in the best possible way we can, all things considered. I know I'm so used to tweeting or posting or bringing up Donkey Kong Racing and just seeing crying emojis as replies. I often associate it with DK Vine community stalwart Carla, who this is the biggest source of despair for her is the lack of Donkey Kong Racing. But no, I think there's beauty in our sorrow, and in seeing the possibility and even not getting it. There is something to be learned from that. And I feel like as a fandom, as a community, we've all grown from it. And you're right, like, let's appreciate what we have because it might not be here tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it is a really helpful, a healthy way to look at it. And as an aside, Jake, slash Sponge, I do recognize your artwork. It's very good. And I think I remember you back in the day from Mario Fan Games Galaxy. So, like this episode, that's a blast from the past. So I do think it's a good way to look at it because that I hadn't really considered, but yeah, even though we ultimately didn't get it, the Donkey Kong Racing trailer is kind of at least confirmation of the direction Rare was thinking of for Donkey Kong at the time. And in a way, I kind of feel like it vindicates a lot of the fan fervor in terms of like paying attention to the stuff they were pulling from, because without the context of what we lost with Donkey Kong Racing, I feel like Donkey Kong Country as a series would not give people the expectation that it would draw on its past all that heavily. Mm-hmm. Like I think again since the buyout days, like Paion's games are the closest we've really broached to that level of indulgent tribute and in-depth references to the past. And I think that kind of in itself gives it this place in history. Like, yeah, this is proof that like this is what we want people to. This is the kind of thing we want a developer to strive for, and it also shows that it's not out of the realm of possibility for them to do it.
Absolutely right. And, you know, you mentioned, like, stuff like Kremlantis, right? Like, I feel like without this trailer, concepts like Kremlantis wouldn't have such the prominence they have in those of us who obsess about the lore and backstory of the Rare archipelago and the history of the Kremlings and the Kongs, and the fact that they were going to bring this area back from Donkey Kong Land. My God. It means more that we knew that intent was there versus never knowing they were going to do it at all, right?
Yeah, I could very much believe that in 2001, nobody at Rare remembered what Kremlantis was.
Yeah, absolutely. But here we are, proof. And it's something that I still get excited about to this day. 20 years on, even though the game is long dead, I still get a little giddy at the notion that, oh, Rare's going to bring back Kremlantis. Like, just this momentary, fleeting, like, forgetfulness or like time displacement where I'm back in the mindset of me but 20 years ago. I don't know what it is. This was an E3 that saw the major Donkey Kong Universe game revealed, ultimately canceled. 2 of the games heavily altered, but it's still held up by me and some others as maybe the best DKU E3 of all time. And why is that? Because we've had great E3s where we've actually gotten the games as intended. And you know, like really quick, E3 2004, it was mired in the politics and drama of the buyout era, but we still got Jungle Beat, we still got King of Swing, we still got Conquer Live and Reloaded, you know. So that was a good E3. E3 2010, if you listen, you can hear it coming. Legendary. E3 2014, Tropical Freeze. E3 2015 with the Renaissance. E3 2019, Banjo and Kazooie and Smash. But I think for me, E3 2001 is not so much E3 itself, because it is the ideal of what we hope and want from every single E3 going into it, what we want that E3 to be for the DKU. We, especially now, like, after, oh my God, 7 years since Tropical Freeze. The entire duration of Rare's tenure on Donkey Kong from Donkey Kong Country to E3 2001 is how long it's been since we've gotten a major console Donkey Kong game. I think that with everything that's happened, this extremely dry period for Donkey Kong, and even when we had Retro's duology, like the complete absence of celebrating the past of Donkey Kong, it's made me realize like E3 2001 represents what we all really aspire for the series and the DKU to be again, maybe one day. The Super Mario Brothers 35th anniversary hoopla, the complete deluge of games for the Mario brand from last year, and the lack of games for Donkey Kong, has, despite the rumors, I think in some ways kind of brought me down a little bit. I think reflecting upon everything this last week or two, it's made me sad because we did have all of that. We had what Mario has at one time when Rare had such shit hot momentum coming out of the Donkey Kong Country series and Diddy Kong Racing and Donkey Kong 64 and Banjo-Kazooie as a spin-off property. And they created a shared universe out of Donkey Kong, and they were basically matching Mario in their output and potential. And then the buyout happened, and everything just faded away into dust. And now here we are 20 years later, and we're still kind of lost. We're still kind of trying to find our way back. And don't get me wrong, like, it's still a very, very good time for the DKU, because Rare finally is a respected part of Xbox games. They've got a very successful IP that's a beloved game. Cameron, you and I play every week together. It's my second favorite game of all time, and probably be my favorite game of all time if Donkey Kong Country 2 didn't exist.
Very possibly Rare's most successful game ever.
Ever on any platform. I mean, that's huge. We never thought we would be there with Rare again. We basically wrote Rare off in the early days of this podcast. We basically had to wait for them because we thought they were dead. And here we are. Like, who could have seen that coming? Playtonic, meanwhile, has formed. And not only are they producing terrific games like Impossible Lair, but they're playing along with our DKU nonsense. They're like celebrating the weird, nerdy minutia that we at DK Vine have always gotten off on. And Impossible Lair, it is essentially that spiritual, non-retro Donkey Kong Country 4. It's basically building on the bones of Donkey Kong Country 3 and giving us this look at what a Donkey Kong Country 4 by this group of people could look like. And honestly, like, in a lot of ways, I think Impossible Lair, I might like it more than Tropical Freeze, or I'm starting to. Controversial opinion, but I just said it. Oops.
I think it's hard for me to say which game I like more. I think, but it's because they appeal to different parts of the my sensibilities that correlate to what I liked about the original Donkey Kong Country games.
Yeah, I mean, either way, like, an embarrassment of riches with Impossible Lair and Tropical Freeze coexisting on the same system, if you want. But, all of that is great, and I am definitely thankful for it. The Rare Renaissance is the terminology we coined for this era that, maybe we're about to enter a new era, but the Rare Renaissance has been good to us. And I'm not, like, eschewing that, or I'm not saying like, oh, I hate Sea of Thieves, oh, I hate Ukulele, give me Banjo, give me Donkey Kong, I want to feel like a kid again. I'm not saying that, but all that being said, I have come to realize, I think, that, hey, IPs and franchises, they do matter too. And they matter to fans. They matter to the community that makes up a fandom. And running DK Vine, I'm always sort of amazed and taken aback by how international our fandom is, and how much is filled with such a wonderfully diverse group of individuals from all walks of life, all creeds. We're brought together because we feel the same things when we play these games. When we visit Donkey Kong Island, for example, we're all feeling the same feelings, and we're having a shared moment, whether we're realizing it or not. And so, yeah, I'm not going to apologize for still holding up Donkey Kong Racing as this great flashpoint for when the series had the most potential, the brightest future possible, and hoping we can get even a little sliver of that back. Yeah, it's a silly game about monkeys made for children, but it brings people together. And I'm not ashamed to be a fan of this stuff, to get a big damn smile when I see Donkey Kong and Taj the Genie riding killer bees in Fungi Forest. I mean, that's the kind of shit that I think makes us all feel something in this community. And so the pain of losing that game, it does hurt, but if I had the chance, I wouldn't want to go back in time and warn myself. Like Jake said, there's something beautiful in knowing we almost had it and losing it, because it does make us appreciate what we have now all the more. And I wouldn't want to miss out on the euphoria of that feeling. I wouldn't want to go back in time and tell myself, hey, don't get excited about this, because it's not going to happen. Because that wouldn't be fair to young me. It wouldn't be fair to the community to have that moment of collective optimism. The unmatched giddiness of it, that is the joy of E3, in my opinion. That is what I want out of every E3. And that's hopefully what we'll all be feeling really soon, in just a couple of weeks. Although, I guess if I did go back in time, I would probably have to say something about 9/11.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.